Coming up next on Two Cops, One Donut.
She went to go stop him. He haymakered her. So fucking punched her in the side of the face. Split her cheek open, dented her cheekbone, turned out. She didn't get knocked out. I saw that she was fine. I was training for SWAT at the time, so I was fit as fuck. He took off out the door, and I chased him up this driveway that was probably
Been training for this.
I'm like, fucking, you're mine, man, fucker.
Yeah.
And so went for him. The driveway was probably about 25 degrees slope. And it was probably about 100 to 150 yards long.
So you were running faster than you were anticipating.
So I'm pushing it hard, and I'm in full kit, like full. We got body. I got vest on. I've got taser on me because the house.
You were a wrecking ball.
I was a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'6", and at the time.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm 6'6".
Holy shit!
And at the time, I was weighing in probably about 200 pounds.
Kiwi specimen.
Yeah, all American.
All right, welcome back. Two Cops, One Donut. I am your host, Eric Levine, and today I have with me a very unique guest, Mr. Chris Chandler-Yates. How are you doing, sir?
Good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Not a problem. I say unique because my man has sailed around the world. My man has traveled across the country on a motorcycle. My man has been a cop in New Zealand, which is one of the bucket list places for me. So I'm very curious to get into the difference culturally of policing in New Zealand versus the United States. And we are also, Chris, I like to put out front what the conversation is going to kind of be about.
Cool,
because people are very impatient in the States.
People are impatient around the world, man. I don't know.
And I've learned from my 1, 2, 3, 4 hour podcast that people are like, bro, I don't want to listen and find out what it's going to be about. I kind of want to know. And if I'm interested, I'm like, you know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Like
Stick
that.
with me.
I think it's like 7 seconds of attention span now. Thanks to Instagram Reels.
So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about burnout and how you are out there actively trying to combat burnout for other cops now. So with that said, welcome, Chris. Appreciate you being on. I see you are out in California. If you guys are worried and wondering what his background is there, he's actually camping up in an RV or something right now.
I'm in my friends. I'm in my long-time family friends. They're like another parent to me. In their driveway in their RV while I'm in Northern California, while I'm trying to help counteract and fight burnout for cops.
Hey, is your microphone the thing you got? It sounds really good.
It's my headphones, man.
I'm really surprised.
Back home, I've got a Yeti mic, and I've got all sorts of podcast stuff because I run a podcast and that as well, which Eric will get you on when my schedule kind of calms down. But
no worries.
It's like I found the headphone mic seems to work after.
Dude, yeah, it's legit. So just this little podcast nerd stuff. So if you're listening, I'm sorry. I found a program by Adobe called like Enhanced Speech, and it's in its beta phase right now. But if you get a guest that comes on and just goes through like their laptop mic or a phone, and it doesn't sound the greatest, and the way podcasts work is like sound is the most important part. People will tune out immediately if it sounds like crap. I ran my last episode through that from one of my guests that talked about cartels, and it turned out really good. Like he was talking through his laptop mic, and when it changed over, it sounded like he was talking from a studio mic. So
wow,
yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't
what was it called again?
It's called Enhanced Speech by Adobe.
So
yeah,
just
Google that.
I have the Adobe suite, so I'll have a look at that.
And you can only upload 3 hours a day, which usually works for me, but just depends on the podcast. But we do have time constraints today, so let's get into it, sir. First and foremost, I like to humanize a little bit. I want people to before you start spewing your BS, I want them to get into your background and kind of know where you came from and what led you to the path that you're on now. So where are you originally from, and kind of give me your background till you became a cop.
Yeah, so my background is I am originally from where I am right now, currently on my travels in Redding, California. So way up Northern California, where we actually classify it as Northern California. It is not San Francisco. Um, to clarify. But anyways, yeah. So originally from here, and then when I was 13, my parents took my little brother and I, put us on a 40-foot catamaran after we drove cross country, and we sailed halfway around the world. So started in the Caribbean, outfitted the boat, did the Caribbean, West Indies, did all that area. I did Panama. Fun little fact: I've done the Panama crossing about 8 times, helping boats and stuff. And then from there, we then went South Pacific and ended up in New Zealand after my mom actually got the.
How old
Um,
were you when you
so I left. I was 13 when we left, and then I was just shy 18 when we arrived in New Zealand.
holy shit. So
Yeah,
you
so all my
traveled.
teenage years were on a boat, homeschooled. Yeah.
How much did you fight on that boat with your brother?
Well, my brother and I are like we could not be more opposite. And so yeah, there's been some fights. I've got some scars and shit on my hands from thinking I was a tactical operator when I wasn't. And trying to, battle my brother. But that yeah, no, we fought a bit, but we're still pretty close.
Did you
But
ever
yeah.
throw him off the boat while you guys were
No, I
traveling?
got thrown off the boat though. My dad pitched me off the boat once. He was like, "You little shit," and threw me off the boat. Not while we were sailing, but yeah, we're in
Oh,
anchorage.
okay. So damn, like we were talking earlier, and I have three major phobias: tornadoes, spiders, and open water. Those
And
are my three
I was gonna say
phobias.
two of those you might get in Texas, but yeah.
Yes, and two of those have had traumatic effects on me through that. I've had traumatic incidences with those. The open water thing, I don't know why. It's not like I grew up around the ocean or anything like that.
Maybe that's
Michigan, I
why.
did have the Great Lakes, which is huge, but we never went out. You could
Yeah.
always see the shore, but when I can't see the land, I am freaked out.
I don't like, and I kind of over it a little bit after a few incidents on the boat, but I don't like jumping in the water out in the middle of the ocean. Like,
When there's
where I can't see the bottom. Like, when I can't see the bottom, we dove all around, so by the time I was 17, I had over 500 dives under my belt, and but yeah, when I can't see the bottom, even when I first jump in and I know the bottom is just beyond my view, I still don't like it.
yeah.
I know what's out there. There's
I was
big
gonna
ass things
say
out there.
there's a lot of things out there. Only 10% about I think we know about.
Yeah,
Then there's the unknown that freaks me out.
yeah, yeah.
Oh shit. So did you ever see like a kraken or anything out there?
No, no krakens. I've seen oceanic white tips, which are pretty nasty sharks. I mean, I've been by the time I was 15, I've been diving with over 200 gray reef sharks at a time. So I've got
That is
images of me
crazy.
with like they look like tadpoles behind me of sharks. Like,
Really.
and yeah, so no,
So homeschooled
yeah.
throughout that, I'm taking it your parents are both very intelligent because it takes a high intelligence to do
To
that.
be honest, the way that we did homeschooling, it was through University of Missouri, like college prep program, and how they had laid it out. Man, my parents didn't need to help me with really that much because I had the textbooks, I had the lesson plans, and it explained it all out. There's occasionally some stuff that I had to ask my dad when it came to either math or science stuff, but actually, it was all self learned. Like they didn't
Really?
actually teach us. We went into our bedroom. We sat there. I sat in my bed. Literally, that was my desk. Sat in my bed and
Really?
just did my stuff. Yeah, it was actually really good. So
Huh. I mean
yeah,
that honestly that's how I learn. I learn best that way.
yeah. I
Um
learned best by practical. So it was great being on the boat, being able to. I mean, I can rip motors apart. By the time I was 17, I ripped one of the diesel motors apart, and I can still do stuff to this day. And people go, "How the hell do you know what to do?" I was like, "I grew up on a boat. You had to learn."
yeah. Well, fire is like the biggest threat to y'all while you're out there,
Oh,
right?
yeah, with
Yeah.
fire, especially with fiberglass. You keep that fire away from
Yeah.
fiberglass, it lights up
Oh,
quick.
God. I'm getting stressed out talking about it, dude. I'm serious. Like, I get anxiety. Like, we don't do cruises. And when we do a cruise, I have to be sauced
Yeah.
like the entire time. I wake up, I'm like, I need a drink. I need something. Because I don't, it's from being a cop. I don't like crowds.
Yeah.
And everybody's, sorry, Europeans, your bubble's a lot different than American bubbles.
Mm. What
My
bubble?
bubble's way bigger. I
What
don't like
bubble?
people.
What
Yeah.
bubble? What bubble?
Yeah. Oh, shit. So I don't like that. And then you put on top of that, I'm in open water that I have zero control over, and I'm a crappy swimmer, so I just get anxiety. The only time I'm relaxed is when we stop at an island.
And
That's
you get
it.
off the boat. You get
And you
off
get
the
off the
boat,
boat.
and you're at the
Yes.
bar.
Yes. But then you're stressed out again because you're like, shit, I don't want to miss it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to wander too far. I want to be able to see the boat.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, dude. Yeah, I get stressed out talking about that. Okay, so you
Uh,
guys sail. You stop at New Zealand. That's
so I'll rewind for a second because we didn't just stop in New Zealand. So initially we weren't going to New Zealand because to get from the islands of South Pacific like Fiji or where we were, it was Tonga, down to New Zealand, it's about a 10-day sail and it can be pretty horrendous. So you get these southern storms, which are like big nasty storms that come up and they come between New Zealand and Australia, and they New Zealand gets them quite often. And then they come up, and you normally get what I call spanked. Either coming down, you're gonna get spanked once, and going back up, you're gonna get spanked. And my mom, so we ended up actually, my mom got the bends scuba diving in Tonga.
really
Yep, no apparent reason. Even the doctors in New Zealand have no idea why, because she did a safer dive, a longer safety stop. The only thing I can put it down to is maybe dehydration because
so.
it was a really hot day.
For those listening, the bends, as far as I understand, is getting air bubbles in your blood.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it kinda causes what's kinda like a stroke, or it can actually kill you if you get it really, really bad, but, so yeah, so hers was her whole right side went kind of numbish. She had pain in her neck initially, but she's broken her neck before when she was 19 diving off a high dive that wasn't designed right.
Damn.
But both my parents are chiropractors and stuff, so they have that medical field, and so we had oxygen on board and stuff, did everything right, and then, yeah, so she got air evac from Tonga to New Zealand
Okay.
where the hyperbaric chamber was. And as soon as she landed in New Zealand, was like, I love it. Like just felt at home. And so yeah, later that year we ended up sailing down to New Zealand and ended up there. So that's how we actually ended up in New Zealand. We were meant to go to Australia, but hey, fate happens, and here we are now.
Wow. So I'm just trying to pull up for those wondering if you're somebody who watches the podcast. I'm pulling up New Zealand real quick so you have a reference on the map. I'm actually very familiar with New Zealand because it's a bucket list thing for me. I got it pulled up right now, just below Australia. How far is that distance between New
So
Zealand and Australia?
it's about a 4 hour flight.
Oh, so it's
It's a distance.
it's a
Yeah,
distance.
yeah,
I mean, it looks like it on the map here,
yeah.
but it
But no,
that's
so many people are like, "Oh, it's just off the coast of Australia." I was like, "No, it's not
not
just." And also people don't realize how big it is. It's from one tip, so it's 3 islands technically, 2 big ones, like where
okay.
most people live. But from the northernmost tip to the southernmost tip is about the same length as the whole west coast of the
Wow.
US. So it's
Wow.
actually quite long. Like the southern island, the South Island, as it's called, is about the size of California.
Okay.
But we have 5 million people in all of New Zealand.
Damn. Wow. All
And
right.
about 3 and a half of those live on the North Island.
Okay. And is it mostly native or is it mostly like
No, so
people?
it's kinda like the US where it's immigrant like, a lot of it's immigrants, so you
Okay.
have all sorts of different cultures there, so we've got quite a big Chinese culture there now, but you've got European, you've got like, there's a lot of European stuff. My brother's married to her, she originates like, her heritage originates from, she's Dutch. So you have
Okay.
that, you have, yeah, people from all over because it was settled as well.
Gotcha.
I think by Christopher Columbus as well, so there you go.
Okay.
Don't quote me
Uh
on that though, I probably have it wrong.
Now in New Zealand, I know Lord of the Rings was filmed there.
Yeah, it
Um
was.
which is awesome. I love Lord of the Rings. But the thing that I like the most, you guys have something called a red stag, I believe, out
Yep,
there if
I've
you're a
shot
hunt.
one. I've got if you
Oh,
actually,
have
you
you
can
really?
yeah, I've got a tattoo of the one that I shot, well, a similar one to what I've shot, so I shot an 11 point down there, it was my first deer.
That's the whole reason I wanna go
Oh,
to New
dude,
Zealand.
if you come over, you let me know, I'll hook you up with a guide and stuff like that.
Oh, man, because they're one, they're beautiful. They're
Oh,
beautiful animal,
amazing.
which sounds kinda counterintuitive. I wanna go hunt one, but, I grew up a hunter, and,
And you can
yeah, I
hunt them
wanna.
year round. You can hunt year round down there
What?
because they're a pest, so you can hunt year round.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. I'm
So
all
you can
about land management, let's
yeah,
do it.
so if you come in April, like, kind of mid-April, the roar is happening, which is kind of the best time to come over and hunt them.
Okay. So this is kind of where we'll get into the format of the show. What I like about what I'm hearing right now is you have a very freaking unique perspective on the world.
Yeah.
and cultures, and you have to deal with people stopping on islands, stopping wherever you guys go to handle your boat situation. And you got to get along with a lot of people, probably even other people you run into out there in the ocean. I don't know how often that happens, but probably not as often as I would hope.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't, it doesn't. We've seen pirates a couple times and didn't like that too much.
really.
Yeah, off of, Columbia.
What do you do when you see
We're
a
pretty
pirate?
positive it was a kinda semi-pirate. We started to turn towards shore pretty much, but we had shotgun on board. We had a
Okay,
marinarized shotgun, so with a bunch of triple up buck and, slugs and different things, so it
so
just in
you're
case,
allowed
but
to have. I don't know how the
you
ocean
can, you just
rules.
have again, you just have to declare it, and because this was a safety item as such, because it was designed that way,
Yeah.
it was a little bit easier in ports. Some ports, would actually take it and they'd hold on to it in their armory,
Oh, okay.
but that only happened a couple places, but most of the time they're fine because
Yeah.
we had a locked container on board, and so we just locked it. It was always locked, and we
Gotcha.
knew where the key was, but yeah,
Yeah, ocean water is not friendly to weapons, so I would
no.
imagine you'd want to keep it pretty sealed up until you need it.
Yeah, yeah. It also, I mean, this was a marinarized one, so it was designed to be around that salt water and stuff, so the
Okay.
coatings and stuff on it were a
I
lot
know a
better.
lot of stuff that's designed to be around salt
Oh, and
water,
they're
but
not. Oh,
it still gets fucked up.
we greased the crap out of that
I
thing.
bet. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I'd have my AR with me at least.
AR is harder. Shotgun's actually quite easy.
Yeah.
So the shotgun's easy because we had one that was designed for line throwing. So you put a blank in it and it would shoot either a float or it'd shoot a
Mm.
rod with it had a canister underneath it. Same thing Coast Guard has some of them.
Oh,
Similar ones. So we would have that so you could shoot a line up onto a container ship if you needed to.
dude, that's awesome.
So it was a maritime, like it was like a safety, it was classified as a safety item.
Gotcha. Okay, that
It
makes
also
sense.
took triple up buck and, we shot a
Yeah.
few goats and stuff with it, but,
All right. Well, you avoid the pirates. You manage to get to New Zealand. You're almost 18 when you get there?
Yeah, yeah, about just shy of 18, yeah.
Okay. So is what's it looking like? Most 18-year-olds are like, I'm looking at colleges now.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you probably graduated early.
Yeah, so I graduated actually, yeah, I graduated. I kinda screwed around when we got there. I coulda graduated probably 6 months earlier, but I once we got there, I was like, "Okay, I'm over this." Started doing, like, 2, 3 lessons a day, smashed it out, got it done, and then started looking at, yeah, so college, or as we call it over there, university, and what I
Mhm.
wanted to do. And so actually, initially, I wanted to go down the naval architecture, so I was gonna design yachts, and I had some designs for, like, racing yachts and stuff I had already kinda written up. But because we didn't have citizenship yet, I was looking at a school in Tasmania in Australia, but because I didn't have New Zealand citizenship, it was going to be like 25 grand or something a semester.
Ooh,
And so I was like, screw, and my parents were like, why don't you go do mechanical engineering for a semester while we get our citizenship, which was about 6 months. And then if you still want to do it, then go over. And it was going to be like 2.5 grand a semester.
fair.
In
Fair.
that
I mean,
time
that's cool.
my mind lost it.
Yeah.
I got away from that. I decided I wanted to go work on super yachts, and then I met my now wife. And so I was doing my skipper's ticket actually. So I'm qualified to skipper and like captain up to 23 meters, so like 70-foot, 200-ton yachts anywhere in the world. Uh,
Man, you had to
but
learn the metric system over there, didn't you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm very good with the metric system, and so you'll
Yeah.
find that yeah,
I'm just
I try and
I'm just a
convert it because I know
fanboy, yeah.
your audience will be all be imperial.
Shit, me too. I'm like
Um,
70, 30 meters, cool.
yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, 22 meters or something like that that I can do. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
about 60, 70 feet. But yeah, so was doing that, and then I met my now wife, and decided, hey, I like this girl, so I'm not gonna go work on super. Well, I tried to get us both onto some boats and stuff, and that fell through. And about that time is when the police had been planted in my mind because I was not one of those kids that was like, I want to be a cop from like young age. I was like,
Right.
screw that, too many rules. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so that's kind of that. I'll go deeper into the story as we kind of go along, but that's kind of
Okay.
the process of
Gotcha.
from arriving to getting there.
Very dude, that's two different worlds, man. I
Yeah.
mean, you coming from the US, going to New Zealand, sailing around the world basically, and then you go into that yacht world, which, I won't lie, my initial impression of that world is like the Richie Rich snob stuck up
It
people.
can be.
It can be, yeah. Because I don't know shit about it, so I'm just talking shit. Uh,
Those expensive yachts, man, yeah,
yeah,
it's more often you'll get dickheads than you get nice
yeah.
guys, but you
I
meet
will s
occasional
I will
nice
say my
guys.
wife and we're island hoppers when we vacation. We've been to Antigua, Barbados, all of the Virgin Island stuff. I mean, just we basically every year we migrate further and further south down the
Yeah,
Caribbean and whatnot. I think Aruba is going to be our last stop, and
Aruba's cool.
we're gonna start visiting. I would love to go to New Zealand,
Come
but
on over, man. Come over.
it's up to her. I think she wants to go to Europe first, but we'll see. Um, but doing that, we go to the docks, and I don't know what they call them, but I
Yeah,
call
the
them,
docks. Yeah, the
yeah. Go
docks,
to the
yeah.
docks, and you see all these big ass yachts, and then the what are they called? I guess it is a yacht. I
Yeah,
don't know what else.
it's a yacht, and then the ones that don't have a mast are a motor vessel, is what they
Okay,
call them. So it's a yacht and a motor vessel, yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, we went there, and several people were actually on their boats and asked us if we wanted to come look, and we actually went on a couple. But yeah, they were nice. I don't know if they owned
There
them or not.
there's a lot of I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of nice owners in that, but, I mean, if you make that much money, you've gotta be a specific type of person anyways. There's somebody who
Yeah,
direct, and when you come onto your boat, you have it for a reason. So,
yeah,
you're paying again, the people that are on them are getting paid to work. It's
yeah,
no different to being a cop. It's just you're on the ocean and you're doing that work instead. So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, so here's where I'm starting to think of some. You left the States when you were like 13. Did you move back
No,
to the States?
I haven't moved back to the States
Okay,
permanently. So
so
I still live and am based out of New Zealand.
when I think of this, your perspective as a cop is more lean towards the culture of New Zealand than it would be because you didn't. Your impression of the U.S. would have been from a young, you
From a
know.
young age, I come back just to I come back every year. So I'm
Yeah.
back here every year. I've done probably about a dozen ride-alongs with cops and that as well.
Okay.
I try and do that. I back when I was a cop especially, I try and do that at least, once every couple trips.
Okay.
I try and jump in with somebody, and being US citizen, it makes it real easy because I
Yeah.
just signed the document as a US citizen instead of being an international.
So when you went over there and you started the application process for New Zealand, you had to be a citizen there, I'm assuming, first.
Resident or citizen, yeah.
Okay. And going through, what was the hiring process like over there where ours is a very invasive background check.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
um typically takes anywhere from 4 or 6 months, sometimes longer. What was yours like over there?
Yeah, so I actually, as part of my business that I do, is I help people actually join the police force over in New Zealand. Build that fitness
Oh,
up, pass the fitness test, and then help them through the application process if we're still working together. So
damn,
I
how hard
know,
is the fitness test?
uh, it's not hard, but it's harder than most places here, it seems like. So the fitness test over there, just before we jump into what the process is, the fitness test over there is a mile and a half run, so 2.4 kilometer run.
Okay.
But you have for guys, you need to do it in at least 11:15
Okay.
at minimum. For women, it is a 12:15. And then you have to be able to do wide push-ups. So they're a wide grip. So you lay in like a crucifix position, mark out your elbows, and that's where your hands go. So it's real wide, and
Oh,
it has to go
okay.
all the way to 90 degrees. So your elbow has to go to 90 degrees.
Okay.
And you have to women have to be able to do minimum 15, preferably 20. Guys have to do 25, preferably 34.
Okay.
And it changed. It changed about 5 years ago. It used to be a little bit harder. And then you have to be able to do a static jump. So you slap a wall, like so you stand next to a wall, jump up, and it's against your reach, your relaxed reach. And then you have to do a grip test.
Okay.
And so that's the fitness test. It used to
Pretty
all
similar to
yeah,
ours. Yep.
similar-ish, but I've heard that like one person was telling me, I forget where it was. It was like a 15-minute run for the mile and a half. I was like, I could walk that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, like for the air because I'm still in the military, the Air Force run time, I think I need to right around that, honestly. I think
Yeah.
it's for my age, because the military, they give you like a age range for certain parameters.
Yeah,
Younger
so
guys have to run faster.
ours used to be by age, so when I joined, I had to be able to do it in 10, 15 or below
Mm,
because of my
yeah.
age at the time. Then they changed it to just to like a BMI type count. So if you're over 30 BMI, you actually have longer. Like I think guys have got 12 minutes and women have 13, but then they have to max out. It's done on this points type thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but so that's the fitness test. But back when I joined, so the reason I joined actually is my brother-in-law was like, "Oh, bro, we should join the police together. We can be partners and be like bad boys and SWAT." And I was like, "Ooh, that'd be fun." And so I started to look into it, went to seminars and that, and then was kind of umming and ahhing about it. Had a medical, knew I had to get LASIK eye surgery to do it because my vision was just out of spec. And so I kind of was like, "Oh, that's gonna be like 5 grand to get done." And so I was kind of like, "Do I really want to do this or not?" And then I was actually in LA at end of 2008, September 2008, and drove past just after a passenger train and freight train had collided together. And I didn't know that had happened at the time. We thought it was just a forest fire, like one of those LA fires, because we saw the smoke. And then on our way home from my uncle's house after we had dinner, the road was closed and that bridge was closed and that. And so then we ended up finding out on the news, on the breaking news, that yeah, that had happened. And how many people died that day? I think it was 23 people died that day. And I was glued to the television going, how the hell do I get down there and help? So much so that I actually turned to my friend that my wife and my now wife we were just dating and I were staying with, and it was like, well, both of them, and was like, "You reckon if I went down there, I'd be able to help out in some way?" And they're like, "No, you need to be one of them to be down there." And
Yeah.
this is me at like 22, so a bit, I was kind of like, joking, but also serious at the same time. And so, literally, the next day, I started running because I did not run. I was a biking. I just swam and biked and but didn't run. So I started running through the hills of Sierra Madre, where I was staying, and then started in the yellow pages because it was before the time of popular Google.
Yep.
Started calling up laser eye places and finding out how much it was. Borrowed some money from my mom, went and had LASIK eye surgery like a week and a half later, 2 weeks later, and then came back and applied for the place end of 2008. And I didn't get to college, as we call it, until 2011.
Okay.
Not
Damn.
because the process takes that long, but because at the time they had just gone through a massive hiring thing in Auckland and they didn't need a white male.
Okay.
So I was
Gotcha.
hearing females and people of ethnicity and that going, getting through and that, and I was like, "What the hell? Like, I can smash every fitness test. I can." I was doing the mile and a half run in like 9:50 with a 10 kilo, like a 25-pound vest on.
Yeah.
So I could. I was training as if I was training for SWAT.
Yeah.
So because that was where I wanted to go, and so yeah, that was me. It took me that long. Now it's starting to get ramp up again, but pre-COVID, you could get in if you had everything you were ticked off. You could be in 6 months.
Okay.
You could be at
That's
call. You could be at training in 6 months from the day you applied.
okay.
More like you're looking more like a year. But yeah, they do background checks. They do all the different stuff. I had to get any place I lived for over 3 months after I was 14. I had to get clearances that I didn't do anything stupid there. So I had to call
Okay.
French Polynesia. I had to call Tonga, literally send Tonga cash to be able to get them to then post me back saying like a piece of paper with a stamp that said that I didn't have it.
Wow.
It was crazy, man. And so yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, no, so I did that and then I joined. I went to training January 2011 is when I went
Okay.
down to
How long was the training?
at the time it was 19 weeks. It's now 17 weeks.
Okay. 17 weeks.
So I was there 19 weeks. Right in the middle, 2 weeks of it is what they call station duty. So and a week of leave. So you have a week of station duty where you run around with the station you're going to work as a recruit. So you're not sworn. You don't actually have arrest powers, but you're in full uniform. It's really weird. Um, and then a week of leave. But yeah, so 17 weeks of hardcore training.
Okay. Now, culturally, for the policing part, firearms training, taser training, baton training, pepper spray is
Yeah.
typical over here.
Yeah, so we same thing. Tasers had just kind of started when I joined. We were like, I don't know, maybe the fifth or sixth like wing as we call it, so class that was getting taser trained. So yeah, so OC spray, baton, taser, defensive tactics, so hand to hand tactics, firearms and driving.
Okay.
our firearms is only 2 weeks of training.
2 weeks for
2 weeks
firearms
of
training?
firearms. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's ridiculous, especially if it's the only focus for the 2 weeks.
yeah, it is.
'Cause you're yeah, that's how my department does it. We don't do block training for anything else except for firearms training
So firearms and
and
firearms and
driving.
driving. Yeah, so we
Yep,
had it was 2 weeks of firearms and then it was 2 weeks of driving.
yep. Our driving is actually coincides with the firing because the class gets split up,
Yeah,
and then one half goes with the driving, the other half goes with the firearms, and then they flip flop.
yeah, we
So,
did the same. We did the same thing.
yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. That way you're not I hate block training, except for in that case because you do kinda have to
Yeah,
get it all out of the way at once to
yeah.
have a
Especially
grasp of it.
in New Zealand, you're dealing with a lot of people that have never even held a firearm.
That's what I was gonna get to. The common thing that you hear is, well, over in Europe and over in other countries, they don't have this gun culture like we have, blah, 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 blah.
It's
And I'm like,
true. It is
I'm not
true, but
not
it's
denying that. But
yeah.
so as far as threats go and stuff like that, where you hear people say, well, we've got this culture of guns over here in America. That's why our cops use their guns all the time. um the other cops in other countries, they don't have to worry about that stuff. If you're law enforcement, stop and listen to me right now. If you're a police department that does not have an LPR system, Insight is offering the first 10 agencies, that means one agency apiece, gets one camera for free. You have to tell them that Two Cops One Donut sent you. You heard me right. If you're a police agency that does not have an LPR system yet, or does have an LPR system and you're not happy with the product you have, Insight is offering you a free camera, no strings attached, and they will install it. I have 10 to give out. Tell them Two Cops One Donut sent you, or reach out to me and I will get you in contact. If you're a business owner or an HOA, please stop and listen to me right now. If you're just listening to the audio, do yourself a favor and watch the YouTube version of this episode to get a visual of what I'm about to tell you. I want to tell you guys about Insight LPR. It's a license plate reader. If your agency, community, or business is looking to invest in LPR to help solve and deter crime or to make your community safer, Insight LPR has my vote of confidence. I've met with their team. They know their LPRs, guys. They're the real deal. They bring over 75 years of collective experience to building LPR cameras and the software that supports communities across the country. The other thing I really like about this team is how much they listen to law enforcement. They understand the importance of working together with law enforcement and getting their input as they build and innovate products and their service to match the needs of law enforcement. In other words, when I complain or have suggestions to make their damn camera better, they actually do it. The Insight LPR team is extremely passionate and takes pride in their product development, which makes their cameras some of the most durable cameras in the market. For the gear nerds out there, what that means is this stuff's made of military grade aluminum and is nitrogen purged, whatever that means. This design makes the cameras rugged and able to withstand harsh weather elements. Here's the big selling point for me. Their nighttime scan accuracy is higher than most of the leading competitors. In my opinion, this is what sets them apart. As we know, the majority of crimes occur at night, so it's critical to have high scan accuracy at night. Insight's cameras check the box with the nighttime plate read accuracy greater than 96%. 96%, guys. That's pretty freaking high. If your community is looking to invest in LPR technology, reach out to one of their experts today or reach out to me. Tell them Two Cops One Donut sent you.
So when I was policing, we didn't even. So I'll rewind to when I was there, and then I still have like my best friend's still a cop. I'm still involved a lot with police in New Zealand, with just through people that I know and little groups that I have that I'm running. Um, when I first started, all the firearms were in the sergeant's station wagon.
What?
So we all his firearms were in the sergeant's station wagon. So they were in
Like
his.
an armory?
No, well, all the firearms. So like our firearms for like the section or for the team that was working, which we would have at most, we'd have like 6 or 8, 10 people kind of working. So the sergeant had all the firearms in his vehicle. So if we were going to a firearms job where it was deemed that we needed the firearms, we had to stop at a safe forward point, get the firearms from the sergeant, kit up, and then and then we'd move in.
Okay.
If it wasn't high enough level that we needed to call AOS, which is our version of SWAT, and they were on call, so you'd be looking at a freaking hour before they even got to the scene. Um, so that was when we first started. It quickly then moved to they put safes in all the vehicles. And at the same time, we had a safe in the vehicle for our taser because the taser wasn't even on us 24/7. and we only had one per vehicle for two of us.
So was I'm guessing the argument is that you've gotten along this far without it.
Exactly.
You don't need it now.
Not necessarily, yeah. And so at that time, and we're going back 2011, so we're going 12 years back.
That's not that far.
That's not that long ago, but so we progressed a lot in 12 years. So we used to have one taser per vehicle for two of us because in Auckland we're two up, and like for general duties like normal patrol. And then they quickly, while I was probably in that first year, I think it was, they went to putting a safe in the trunk for the AR, and it held their body armor. So we had one AR in the trunk, and then in the front lockbox where the taser was, they then put a Glock in there as well. So we had one Glock, one rifle, one AR, and one taser for the two of us.
So did you just have an empty holster?
No, so the gun was, those Blackhawk, the Blade Tech holsters that kind of slide off, and you just have the little clip that sits on.
Yeah.
We had the little clip, and the holster was all with the Glock, and so the Glock was loaded but not actioned.
Okay.
So both firearms were loaded but not actioned in the safe. So you had to take them out, action them, yeah. So you had to stop, get the Glock, get the rifle, and so what normally happened is the passenger had the taser, the driver had nothing, and then when you had to kit up or you go to an armed job as we called it, you get out, the driver would get the Glock, the passenger would have the taser and then the rifle as well, and then you go to the scene. So that was us for a very long time.
Hold on. Before we go any farther, I just
Yep.
Were you guys like saying how stupid that is?
Oh,
I mean,
all of us, a lot of us, a lot. So the thing is, like, I grew up with firearms. I think I was shooting pistols. My parents trained me here in California to shoot a pistol, like a 22 at like 5. Because their thing was, I'd rather you know how to safely handle a firearm and not be afraid of it than be at a friend's house and somebody end up shooting each other because somebody finds a pistol. At least you know how to safely put it down and then get a parent. And so I had that gun culture in my head, but you have to understand most New Zealanders haven't even seen a firearm, or if they have it, it's a bolt action or a hunting rifle.
So on the job with the native people that worked with you, the ones that are from New Zealand, they don't have
the ones
this.
that grew up there, yeah.
What were they like? No, this is fine. This makes
You
sense.
had a lot of them that had been weren't too happy with it, but then it was like a 50-50 split. I would actually say probably 60% of people were fine with kind of how it was sitting and 40% not. But also at the same time, I will say, like, I think I've found on my first year and a half, I found like 3 firearms. Never had one pulled on me. Been to a few jobs. I went to one job where I had to pull a firearm on somebody, but never, like, didn't have that risk level. Like I did ride-alongs over here within that first year, and like, the cop walks up half, pistol half out as he's, we're out rural middle of freaking nowhere with the sheriff, with the sheriff deputy out here, and they're like, they're ready to go as they walk up. But I also understand that New Zealanders are like what the, like, why do they have the gun out all the time? I was like, you realize that, like, I think every single person I know here has a firearm.
Yeah. Well, so the way that I kind of look at it too is just due to the nature of the job. It doesn't matter if you're in New Zealand, you're on an island that has never allowed guns, wherever you're at. Due to the nature of the job, because you're more likely to run across somebody that is committing a crime or having one of the worst times of their lives through some sort of mental instability thing, whatever it is, although we don't shoot or get shot at that often, regardless if it's the US or another place, the potential is there. So I'd rather have it
So
and not need it
I always
than
wanted to have it and not need it.
yes.
And so what I did, I did a year on front line, had a female partner of mine get assaulted, and it kind of rocked me real bad, which is why I started to kind of burn out at that stage already. It rocked me in ways that I didn't understand because I didn't understand a lot of myself, which I know we'll talk about later on, and it's why I do what I do now. But then I went to our version of highway patrol. So I went to motorways for a year. Put my hand up for it. Was like, yeah, cool. I want to go there because you work one up. We covered a 300-kilometer area, which is about 200-mile area that we covered, and there would be, like, 3 or 4 of us working, and there was 1 vehicle that had, firearms and a taser in it. All the rest had nothing.
What the shit?
So I would, because I was so firearms, and my dad import he still does. About that time, he was importing firearms and stuff into New Zealand, so he would pay for me to go to the range, and so that I could shoot pistols and keep that skill up. And so they were like, "Yeah, cool, Chris, you can take the armed vehicle, like go." And so I always had it, and I'd always get in trouble because I'd have the taser on me all the time. Because I was like, I didn't feel the threat level was necessary for firearm, and I would get in major trouble if I had the firearm on me all the time, especially working in the city area, not out rural. And so I always used to carry the taser, but then I'd forget to take the thing off when I got back to the station. The bosses would be like, "Why do you have a taser on?" And I would be like, yeah, I just stopped somebody that I deemed assaultive from their information on the vehicle." And so they couldn't really fight that because they weren't out there, um
Right.
but I used to always have the firearms car, so I had the taser. My justification with it was, if I walk into a scene or pull up on a car and they have a gun, at least I have something to pull on them to be able to hopefully get my ass out of there.
Yeah.
At least something that shoots distance and it's not just a baton or my hands. And so, yeah, so I had that, but yeah, now I'd be carrying it. Like, I always was like, give me a freaking firearm. The problem was, is I was always worried about the people because they didn't have that gun culture and that gun awareness, that firearms awareness, and respect. Was I didn't really want to stack. There was very few people I was happy to stack up on a line with and not
Yeah.
think I was going to get shot in the ass. So yeah, so that was that. Now, if we fast forward to now, because I did do 3.5 years on diplomatic protection, so our version of Secret Service. So I was armed every day that I was operational, which was kind of nice, but didn't
Y
wasn't interacting with the same clientele at that stage.
right.
But you fast forward to now. Now they have every officer carries a taser 24/7. So they're kind of like, like here, they all have tasers on them. Uh, and they have 2 Glocks and 2 rifles in the vehicle. So they're still in the vehicle, and it's still, even back when the firearms were in the car. It's up to the officers' perceived accumulative assessment, or their tenor, as they call it in New Zealand,
Okay.
of whether the job that they're going to deems it necessary to put a firearm on. So if they fear death or grievous bodily harm from the notifications, from the dealings, from all the different things of the address and the people that are there, then they can put it on and have it there.
But
So
there's no set, like, here's
no,
when you can have it, when you can't have it?
no, no. So you have to just be able to justify it, and you're supposed to tell your supervisor, tell like comms, tell dispatch that
Okay.
you put it on. Now it doesn't happen.
I can understand. Okay, I'm going to take a 10 report, a burglary report, whatever, and it happened the day ago or 2 days
Yeah,
ago.
you
Okay.
don't need it. You don't need. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I get that,
yeah.
but
So
domestic wearing it,
yeah,
you
well,
know?
this is my thing. So my dad did like FBI training and stuff back when he was younger, because he worked for the Forest Service and that, and he also wanted to be a cop, but because of the things that he was doing, they wouldn't, like, the company that he was working for wouldn't let him be a part time cop and that. But when I first joined, my dad bought me a Glock for graduation and signed me up for the pistol club, and so that I could then do that skills. But he also told me right in the very beginning, he's like, if somebody's willing to run, they're willing to kill you. If they're willing to run from you in a car, they're definitely willing to kill you. So freaking take them out at gunpoint, which we weren't really allowed to at the time either. Um, yeah, again, all these different things, different culture though. But
Mhm.
we've had, in the history of New Zealand police, I think we've had 20 cops killed.
That's I mean, that's a good
It-
amount. It's
It's a
not
good, it's a good amount, but also it's like, that's over, like, in the last, we've had, in the time that I've been in New Zealand, we've had more in the last 4 years than kind of ever. But we had a cop get killed a couple years ago, and a friend of mine was his partner, and he survived. Like, my friend survived, but the other guy didn't.
how are these cops getting killed? That's one of the things I'm wondering, like,
So the
weapons?
yeah, so they're, yes, pretty much shot. Um, yeah, so this cop, the cop that got killed, and my buddy who got shot, They got pretty much, the guy did a runner from him. Turned out he had an AK in the car. They went and
Oh,
stopped. Like the guy crashed. They thought that he'd be slumped over the wheel. My buddy went to go approach the car, and the guy came out the passenger side with an AK and started shooting at them. He took off. He took, what did he take? 3 shots. He took one through the hip, like just skimmed through his duty belt and skimmed the meat of his hip on the right hand side, and then he took a few shrapnel shots in the leg. Uh, and then the other guy, so he took off, and the guy took off after, like kind of started chasing him. And then the other guy, the other cop, who was driving, got out, went to go to the trunk to get the rifle out, and as he was doing that, the guy had come back and shot him in the back twice,
ugh.
2 3 times, and then went up and shot him while he was on the ground. Shot him, suicide shot him, and through the hip, like through the lower abdomen. And because it was an AK, went straight through his vest.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, and so yeah, so we had that. That was just before COVID, just around the time of COVID. Yeah, just before COVID. And so yeah, but now it's becoming more and more. There's like the cops are arming themselves more and more because they're just like they're getting guns pulled on them. I just talked to a cop the other day, interviewing him for like some market research, and he's like, he does highway patrol, so he's out rural. He's like, I'm consistently finding guns, or like getting a gun pulled on me, or something like different
Yeah.
dumb stuff, but you don't hear about it because they don't want to publicize it. But yeah, they still don't want to arm cops over there.
Damn.
So, and it's becoming more, I think it's like a 70-30 split now for wanting to be armed.
Huh.
So yeah, so
Okay.
that's what we deal with. But because of that, there's a lot of pros that come out of it as well. Like I feel like a lot of the cops that I've done ride-alongs with and that over here, their communication skills aren't the best in the world.
Yeah.
They go to force first. Uh, Now that could just be the people that I'm seeing and hearing about, and that. But again, there's a lot of cops over here. Whereas in New Zealand, we are extremely good with our comms,
Yeah.
like extremely good. It's not as good now because you got a lot of young, naive cops because a lot of people have left, and just
Yep.
because of COVID and
I
the
think that
circumstances of the world. But we're very good with communication over there. And I mean, again, you get a gun pulled on, you can have somebody who wants to kill you, then communication is not going to do jack to it.
right.
But we're also very aware of situational awareness. I feel like
Yeah.
we're quite good at over in New Zealand.
Now I haven't been to New Zealand, but just about every island I've been, all islands I've been to, the people are just friendlier. The
Yeah, people
communication always seems to have been there.
yeah,
So maybe that's where the enhanced communication comes
could be,
from.
could be.
So,
Yeah.
because why would you not be happy living on an island?
I don't know. It takes a while to get anywhere, though.
Yeah,
Things are a bit
right.
more expensive. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
I
pros
get
and
that.
cons to anything.
Yep. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to deal with all that, you just step outside and you're like, you know what? This ain't that bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
No,
good view.
no. So yeah. Not being armed does bring it. It brings its challenges, but it also brings some better stuff. But again, I personally always wanted to be, just
So you
because of
do
that stress.
you do your time there, and as you're doing it, I'm sure you started out like any other cop. You start out in patrol, and then you move on to highway patrol, as you
Yeah,
called
some
it.
motorway. Yeah, so went on to
Okay.
motorways.
Were
Yeah.
you motor cop, like on a motorcycle,
No,
or were you?
no, I wasn't a motor cop. Yeah, no, I wasn't a motor cop.
Okay.
I almost went to that before I ended up leaving, quite a few years later, but no.
Okay. So you're doing that now as you're learning police work, because obviously it wasn't something you've always wanted to do. And I'm not sure what specialized units y'all had. Like, how many officers were in your department? Do you know, like roughly?
I have no idea how many were in my actual department, but we had, so frontline when I was doing like patrol as such. We had, our section had 2 sergeants and like 10 officers, kind of. So we'd have, if we were full, which we never were, you'd have 5 6 cars on the road plus a
Okay.
sergeant, and then a
Uh,
sergeant was in the station as well.
so you're doing that. Was there any jobs where you're like, oh, I really want to do SWAT, or I want to be like a neighborhood patrol officer, or I want to
So
be,
from day one, I wanted to do SWAT, which we call
okay.
AOS. It's called AOS, Armed Offender Squad. So I wanted to do SWAT, like our version of SWAT from the very beginning. So I
Okay.
was training like that before I even joined. I was training to get into that. I was like, you got to be elite fitness. So I'm just training for that. Like
Okay.
I was so fit that while I waited and I got sick of waiting, I decided to go Navy divers, and I was passing all the fitness stuff. And then while I was waiting, who was going to call me up? The police called me up and said, "Okay, cool, you're going."
Okay.
So
So did you get to that before you ended up leaving or
So I never got to AOS, but
okay.
I did do because I was so fit at the time. I applied for AOS for the selection course, and I also applied at the same time for diplomatic protection, so our version of Secret Service. So the 2 weeks before I did the AOS selection, which I'll just call it SWAT because it's easier because I take it most of your audience is US. Um, when I went for the 2 weeks before I did the SWAT selection course, I did diplomatic protection selection course. Passed that, and then the SWAT selection course, I passed everything, but didn't pass at high enough level in my scenarios.
Okay. Yeah, scenarios of
Yeah,
fuck yeah.
to be selected to be selected from that to then go to national selection, which would then be at HQ down in
Yeah.
Wellington.
Yeah.
And so, but there was 25 of us that day that
Yeah.
were all trying out for 2 positions.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I thought,
that's typical.
yeah, and I was in the top 5, so I was kind of happy with that. And I passed it my protection selection, so then I ended up going to, and that was it. They didn't do a district one; they did just
Yeah.
national. So I just come back from that, and the guys at selection, like the bosses, were like, "Oh, it's probably because of just coming off the back of the diplomatic protection selection, which is a little bit different kinds of scenarios." Um, so yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I didn't get that, and then I ended up going down the diplomatic protection route. So I got qualified in that, and then about a year later, I actually got shoulder tap and actually started doing that job, and I did that for about 3.5 years.
Okay. So for those listening, if you're like, what are you talking about scenario? Like, basically when you go out for SWAT, there's a lot of things in your control. Your fitness level, your job knowledge, all that stuff. The one thing that's really not in your control is the scenario based testing, which could be room clearing, could be clearing an airplane. It could be a whole bunch of stuff. But if you haven't had that type of training, it's your first time trying out for SWAT or whatever it is, you're at a big disadvantage, especially if you haven't put yourself through any schools and things like that. Because when you go for SWAT at any major department or whatever it is, especially if it's a full time SWAT team, they want the people that want that team and have put themselves through some schools and shown that they'll do what it takes to be a team member for that stuff. So it is hard.
Yeah. So
I've
our
never
SWAT,
been that guy though.
yeah, no. So I went for it, and I mean, I'll put a little perspective in it. I was less than 2 years into the job when I did all this.
Yeah. And
So
yeah.
I had just no, sorry, I was just I was about just shy of 2 years when I did all this because I just passed all my probationary stuff. So I
Hold on
just
one second. All right. Let's go back to that. Had to make a little noise marker for the editing portion later on. Okay, so what were we discussing there? I got
so like for so SWAT. So how
you were
SWAT
on for
kind of
2
works.
years and then you
Yeah. So I had just gotten past my field training, and so I did that, and then yeah, and so I ended up going down the diplomatic protection route. But I always wanted to be SWAT. Like
okay.
that was where I wanted to go. So I stopped kind of training for it, went down the route of diplomatic protection. I had to apply. What did I apply? I applied 6 times for the full time role. So I initially applied once for the residential security. So I was at the prime minister's house, and I was there for about just shy of a year. And I applied like 6 times for the full time bodyguard role, protection officer role. Uh,
Okay.
and it wasn't that I wasn't qualified to do it. I just kept fucking up my interviews. Like
Ah,
literally, like the boss would
yeah.
be like, "Dude, if you just did better at your freaking like your examples, you'd already be in." And I was
Yeah.
going up against guys that had been in the squad or were transferring from one area to another or had been in the job for quite a few years. Finally got it, nailed my last one as the senior sergeant who was in charge of the unit walked me out. He's like, "Well done." And so I was like, "Okay, cool. I think I got the job finally."
Mm.
And then I did that for a further 2.5 years. I was doing the actual,
Okay.
well, yeah. So I did 3.5 years total on that. And during that, another selection came up for SWAT, and so I went for it. And I was already burned out at this stage. I'll just reiterate that. And I went for SWAT again, Didn't do any prep for it. Kind of trained for it. Was mentally not really there. Uh, and this was actually, sorry, just before I actually got the full time job as diplomatic protection. And yeah, uh, went for it. Failed the written test because I didn't do really any study at all for it. Failed the written test. Got told, okay, you need to leave during the selection because if you fail the written test, they'll
Yeah, you're
keep going.
done.
You're done. So you leave early. Got home. My wife was like, "What happened? Did you hurt yourself? Did you hurt yourself?" I was like, "No,
What'd
I
you
fa—"
fuck up?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so no, I failed the written test, and I thought I was gutted. And about 4 days later, I was meant to have I had an interview for diplomatic protection. Like I think it was like the fourth one or third one. Obviously, back then I was a slow learner. Uh, and I got called up and told, "Don't apply again for SWAT."
Really?
Yeah. So in Auckland, so Auckland's the biggest city in New Zealand. So they have like the biggest police like force as such. It's spread over three different districts and that. But yeah, so they said don't apply again. And so that just knocked me completely because that was again what I wanted to do from the very beginning. Like
Yeah.
everything I did was to get to that point, and I fucked up. Like just the fact that I screwed up so bad, it knocked me, and I was already burned out at that stage, and so I just kind of lost all hope.
Damn.
And so I kept going down the diplomatic protection route because I was like, okay, cool, I want to do that because I want to be in the office with all the boys, and it's something that it's somewhat tactical. But yeah, I started spiraling even more after that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so I got some more of the educational questions for
yeah,
me specifically because I,
that's fine.
I love this is parts that I like. It seems like your policing is federalized because you said you're
Yeah.
doing dignitary protection and stuff like that. So I'm
So
trying to distinguish
we
the
have one. Sorry, I should have said this way back in the beginning. We have one police force in New Zealand.
oh. So
So
when
it's
I asked
all
like how
one
many
police
cops there
force.
are, that's why you're
So
like, I don't
yeah,
fucking know.
there's about 3,500 cops that cover all of
Oh,
New Zealand.
no shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
for 5 million people.
But you all work for the same.
So it's for the same. So for New Zealand police, it is all
Okay.
just for New Zealand police.
That
And so
is
then
interesting.
you're in different districts or different cities and that, and you can apply to
Yeah.
go to different areas. But you're not having. It's not like me trying to be a Reading cop and then trying to go for U.S. Marshals. Like
Right.
it's complete different
So the culture
complete
of
different.
policing is the same across
Yeah,
the board for
that's
y'all.
yeah. So it's all the same. We all wear the same uniform. We all like. Well, I
Ah,
mean, different colors sometimes,
interesting.
but yeah, it's all one police force. So everything that happens gets implemented out to this whole thing. So you have PNHQ, Police National Headquarters, which is in Wellington, where the capital is. But yeah, so they're like the boss. But yeah, so literally, when I wanted to go diplomatic protection, I was a street cop, and I just literally
Ah.
the position comes up on our internal system, and you apply for it.
So you're when you're going for a position, you're going against you can
You're
honestly
going against
say,
the whole country.
I'm going against the country,
Yeah,
baby.
literally. Like, I mean, there's
Yeah.
internal station stuff. So it's expression of interest, or there's jobs that you can apply for within your station. So like Auckland's spread into three districts: the Waitemata, Auckland, and then counties Manukau. And so if you want to cross from district to district, it can be harder, and you have to apply for an actual job and then get released from your district and that. But um, yeah, so it's easier to go within district, but
Yeah.
so it's all one thing. So
That's interesting.
it makes
Okay.
it easy to move around, but like for me and my burnout program to try and get that implemented into the department it's like trying to get it implemented into like
Yeah, they
yeah,
because you're that's
federal.
government red tape,
Yeah,
basically. That's
yeah,
a long
yeah.
process.
So you're not dealing with a city, you're dealing with the whole government.
Right. Oh, geez. Okay, so when you were doing now, we don't have dignitary protection training. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like when you're going through that type of training, like without giving away any trade secrets, I guess, like kind of walk me through like I don't know anything about that. And I've been a
So
cop
yeah,
17 years.
so you're doing stuff pretty much with Secret Service. We're New Zealand's version of Secret Service.
Okay.
So
Oh shit.
that's
You're
the
like
job that I went for.
talking
Yeah,
in your wrist
sleep
and shit.
talker, sleep talker, as they used to call us, or as a
Yeah.
uniform guys used to call us and me. So yeah, so I'm literally that is exactly what I'm doing. So my one of my highlights of my career was actually working alongside Secret Service when Biden was vice president. He came over to New Zealand, So got to work alongside Secret Service and see how they worked with all their circles and everything that they
Yeah.
have, and it was a massive op. So I was on the prime minister's protection, but because of that, we were working closely with the team that was in the same office as me that was working with Secret Service. And so yeah, it was a fucking nightmare to be honest. But um, Secret Service don't let anything out. Like literally, it's like 3 days out, and they're telling you exactly what they're doing, um,
Yeah.
because they have to. So yeah, but yeah, now that's what I was doing for 3.5 years.
No shit.
The final 3.5 years of my career. That's what I was doing.
Okay, interesting. Okay, now it's going to give a lot more context now about where you started getting into like the burnout phase because in my experience as being a prior federal cop and being a cop in the military, and we're still talking the same red tape. It's a national government policing agency in a sense, where the red tape goes across, shit. I at my one base I was at, there was 3,000 cops. So
Yeah,
just to give you some context, in some states like Texas have freaking 5, 10 bases,
yeah,
just for the Air Force.
yeah,
But it's trying to get change effect in something that big. So the burnout can come much quicker, in my opinion, than working for a city where the culture is based on that city alone and the red tape is based on that city alone. It's not a nationwide issue or anything like
yeah.
that. So for y'all, that makes a big difference. Okay. Now that I kind of understand where you came from and I understand the police, like we could do a whole episode just on being a cop in New
We
Zealand.
could, we could.
So, but I want to get to your stuff. So we're right about at the hour mark. So let's dive into what caused you to finally end up quitting,
Mm.
and getting into what you're doing today.
Yeah, so like I said a little bit earlier on, I had a female partner of mine went to a like I loved the job. My first year, I was trying to get all my friends to join, man. I was like, "This is the best job in the world. It's so much fun. We get to make a massive impact, as well as I get to drive fast. I get to play with cool toys. It was fun.
You
Like
got
you
to get
said,
them out of the trunk, but you get to play with them.
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. I can still rub them. When I'm on
Yeah.
scene guard, I can sit there and play with it. Sounds dodgy. Um,
That's a New Zealand word right there.
dodgy is, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So about a year into the job, just over a year, female partner and I, which we changed partners, so you don't have one partner for your whole career. Like every
Oh,
time you're on every shift, you'll end up probably with somebody new. But she had been in
every
about
shift?
yeah, every shift, you'll probably be with somebody new. When you first start, you'll be with your field training officer for the
Right.
first, like, maybe a couple months. But then, like, each shift, the sergeant will just go, okay, Chris, you and Steve are together. Chris, you and Kirk are together. Like, and so it'll
Ugh,
change up. So you're not with
I
the
don't like
same
that.
person. You're not with the same person every time.
Well, are you
I,
even going to the same areas?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're on the same section. So you work with the same 10 guys,
Okay.
same 10 guys and gals, but you might on that shift. So like today I might work with you.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'll work with somebody else. Or for like 3 shifts together, we'll work together. Um, and
So
so you kind of
I'm sorry, let me
yeah,
cut you
go
off
ahead.
for a second. So,
Yeah,
I'm very much into the community policing thing.
yeah,
I think working a beat is one of the greatest things that a cop can do because you get to take the time to learn the
yeah.
area, learn your people, and create those relationships that I think are important. Now, in your situation, when you're switching partners all the time, do you still work the same geographical area where you could get to learn everybody? Or are they moving you around kind of like in a big city?
Yeah, so our station, so it'd be like so our station covered North Shore, which isn't one suburb, but it kind of covers, how do you describe it? It'd be like covering a quarter of the city kind of thing.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
so you cover that area. So you won't necessarily work the same suburbs every time, but you work the same area. So I worked out of the same station
Okay.
for the first year and a half of my career.
Okay.
And so you work the same station, which covers the same area, but you might patrol a different area within that area
Okay.
each time. So I might be
Makes it
BKI, which
harder to
well,
get to know people, but still capable.
but again, yeah, it does. But again, we're covering like it, like our city's 2 million people, the total city. So I think the area that we covered was probably at least 500,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're covering big area. So you don't really you get to know your regulars, as we
Yeah.
call them,
Frequent flyers.
your frequent
Like,
flyers.
yeah.
But you had other areas that you could work. So I was normal patrol, but then you'd have community and policing. So if you want to become a community cop, then that is your job, is to get to know your area. So you'd have like one area is
Yeah.
called Glenfield. You'd have the Glenfield community cop, and so he and maybe a couple other people that worked in that station, because it's another little like satellite station. He'd get to know all the people, like he'd know those
Right.
people in Glenfield, and so he'd really get in with the
Yeah.
community, he'd be in the schools, and he'd be, you have all that. Whereas us, we're freaking, we're like normal patrol, just the
Yeah.
response unit.
How many? Okay, because that's a shitload of that's a dense population.
Yeah.
How many calls are y'all shagging a day? I mean, were
Oh,
you
yeah, I mean, North Shore was
call to
kind of
call?
North Shore was the quietest, but yeah, you'd be called to call. Henderson, which was the other part of North Shore, like it was the other part of Waitemata, so the two main stations was North Shore and then Henderson. They were literally, they probably, if you looked at it right now, I'd say they probably have 60 jobs waiting.
Oh, okay. Shit.
So, I'm just gonna
What was
I'm gonna have a look real quick.
I'm just curious, what was the common problems?
Domestics.
Domestics? Yeah. I makes sense. I just curious, island life, I can't see, I know guns are obviously
Sorry,
there,
I
but
I completely blew that number of people out living in North Shore. You're looking at about 65,000 people.
oh, okay.
So not as many.
Still, it's
Uh,
for a beat or
uh,
for a general area, that's a
wait a
lot.
sec. This
That's
is
pretty good.
I'm trying to actually 2010 estimated population. No, 229,000 people.
That was in 2010.
That was in 2010.
Yeah, it's dude, probably a
So
lot.
that's back when I kind of started, a year before I
Yeah,
started.
probably a lot more now.
Yeah, it'll be a lot more now. But
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, it's not quite
Still,
200.
that's a lot. That's a lot of
Yeah,
people for
230,000 people. So there's probably at least 300,000 people there now.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
where I'm working, we're at 1,000,000, 1.2,
yeah,
something like that for the whole
yes,
city.
yeah.
So,
So our whole city is, which is three different districts, multiple different stations, and that you're looking at, I think it's at least close to 2 million people.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Wow. Okay.
230,000 people is the area that we would patrol, and there would be five of us, like
Okay.
five patrol cars.
And of course, you're understaffed
Yeah, if we
and
were
your
lucky,
guns
we had five. Most of the time, we had three.
and your guns are in the trunk.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the stress is high. I get
Yeah,
it.
so it wasn't so much the stress that burned me out. So, like I was saying, female partner and I went to a domestic. We went to another address to find one of the people. One of the kids was there from this domestic. These two kids had a massive fight. One of the kids lived behind the mom. The two brothers came into the house, bashed up the house, had a fight, broke a whole bunch of shit, and then fucked off. And one of them lived down the road, and so we went to the address down the road. And actually, the brother who lived behind the mom's house was at the house down the road, but the other one wasn't. So confusing there. But so we're like, cool. Went to go arrest. I went to go arrest him. My partner was kind of holding the front door, talking to one of the other guys that was there. The guy I was trying to arrest started to evade arrest, run around the house, and tried to, and then tried to go for the front door. She went to go stop him. He haymakered her, so fucking punched her in the side of the face, split her cheek open, dented her cheekbone. Turned out she didn't get knocked out. I saw that she was fine. I was training for SWAT at the time, so I was fit as fuck. He took off out the door, and I chased him up this driveway that was probably
Been
about.
training for this.
Oh, I'm like, fucking, you're mine, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And so went for him. Went for him. The driveway was probably about 20-25 degrees slope, and it was probably about 100 to 150 yards long.
So you were running faster than you were
So
anticipating.
I'm pushing it hard, and I'm in full kit, like full.
Yeah.
We got body. I got vest on. I've got taser on me because the house
You
that
were
we're
a
going
wrecking
to.
ball.
I was a wrecking ball,
Yeah.
and I'm 6'6", and at the time I
Are
think
you really?
I'm 6'6",
Holy shit.
and at the time I was weighing in probably about 200 pounds.
Kiwi specimen.
Yeah, all American muscle, bro.
Right.
But
That's great.
yeah,
They probably thought you were a freak.
yeah, and so and with a vest on and with boots and all that, I'm probably 6'7", six, with boots and
Yeah.
everything. But so I'm chasing this guy, I'm yelling at him, motherfucker, I'm gonna catch you. You may as well give up. And he's and like so I'm slowly catching on him because he had quite a lead on me when I first took off. I go to at one point go to spray him, and because he turned back and kind of looked at me, and
While you're running?
I was like, oh fucker, and I sprayed him, and I was
That's
a
a rookie
dumbass.
move,
I was a
bro.
fucking rookie move, man. And
Boom.
at training, I was sprayed, so I knew what the shit was like. So I was like, ugh. All it did was piss me off more because I was
Yeah.
like, and so he gets up, he goes around the corner, goes into the yard, and at that stage turns around to kind of confront me, and I just sprayed him. And he was still kind of moving, but sprayed him. And as I sprayed him, he just dropped like a sack of potatoes, and I was fucking on him. But he landed with his arms underneath his chest, so you know there's got to be a few kidney shots in that in there to get those arms behind him.
Right.
But I was controlled. I didn't use excess force. I was like, okay, cool, everything, yeah, good. Got on the radio, asked if my partner was okay. By that stage, she had hit the emergency button, so like the 1010, we call it 1010.
So everybody's coming in.
Yeah. So and we're just on the shift change, so night shift was
Oh,
just
yeah,
coming in.
everybody there.
So we're on late shift, and night shift was just coming in. So and I didn't realize that kind of thing. Like we were just like, we'll do one more thing, we'll go there, then we'll go back to the station. If we can't find him, we'll just go back to the station, do the paperwork, and night shift will lead up and chase these guys down. And so she ends up there, and she is sitting there. She is so pissed off. She had a mag light, one of those 3-cell mag lights, and she is sitting there because he's sitting there. By this point, I've got him cuffed, but he's still thrashing around. He's not a huge guy, but he's lean and pretty strong. And he's thrashing around, grabbing me. I'm pinned on his back. Kind of like, I'll throw it out there, kind of like the George Floyd situation. I'm on his back, like, because I'm like, he ain't moving. But he's thrashing around, and he's swearing at me and trying to grab my pants and rip at him, and he's kicking around. So she gets up there, crosses his legs and puts him up on him. And she's sitting there. You can see how pissed off she is because she's sitting there, has the pump going. You know, the pump,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
pissed
yeah.
off. I want to bash the crap out of this guy, but I'm not going to. And so next thing, and it felt like forever, but I'm sure it wasn't. Next thing, there's cops everywhere.
Yeah.
Because the emergency buttons are
Yeah.
pressed. And so they're like, is there anybody outstanding? The dog handler, the canine unit gets there, and like the dog's there, and he's like fucking barking in my face. I'm like, get that fucking thing out of my
Yeah.
face. And they're like, is there anybody outstanding? And like even the bosses and that, and like the area inspector's there. And we're like, nah, nobody's outstanding. We've got him, and it turns, everybody's okay. But her, like, she's bleeding, and that she never came back to the job from that.
Wow.
She took
Yeah.
leave without pay the next day, and then ended up resigning. And so I took that, not that it was my fault, but I took it very personally
Yeah.
because what I've come to find out, my whole thing is to cause less pain. And in my eyes, I caused pain because I didn't arrest him fast enough.
Gotcha.
And so I held that burden for a very long, until after I left the place.
It's a form of survivor's guilt.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It is.
really
It
what
was
it
like,
is.
why the fuck wasn't it me that got punched? I could have taken the
Right.
punch. She left the
Right.
job, and she and I have talked, and she's like, "It's not your fault. It was just the last straw on the camel's back." She's just like, "It was the last thing that I wanted to." I just decided I was already thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
Um, and she did that. I then, instead of becoming, because I'm an empath at heart, like, care too much about things at times. Instead of going and becoming more assertive on my arrests and my going to situations and scenes, I just pulled back.
Yeah.
And so I went
So
completely against myself.
let's talk about that for a second. So new officers, especially if you're listening to this, and citizens, part of the issue where you're thinking, well, that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't automatically go to force or being, authoritative or anything like that. Most of the time, the hesitation causes more injury to everybody in the long run. Where being more assertive and using that training and experiencing, knowing that if I hit him right now before he gets a chance to amp himself up, or if I take him down, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a hit, I can end things quick, fast, and in a hurry. Yes, the
Before
bad
more
guy might
damage
get hurt,
happens.
or the cop may get hurt. Or somebody may get hurt, but not near as bad or nearly as amped up as it would have happened had we not handled things immediately. So
Yep.
it's a hard concept for people to understand until they've seen it.
it's a very thin line too
It
between too
is.
much and not enough, and
Yeah.
so I instantly pulled back, and so I would not so much when it came to using when I was in the fight, but I would always, like, just look over my shoulder and go, "Is now the time? Like, what do you wanna do?"
Yeah.
And so I would just I'd let everybody else tell me what to do
Yeah.
instead of taking my own. Now, when I was working alone, okay, cool, it was a little bit different, but if I was working with somebody else, I would always go, "Oh, what should I do?"
Yeah.
And at
And
this
they
stage, I knew what the hell to do. Like, I was an experienced enough cop that
yeah.
but it was because of that situation that I went, "Okay, I'm
Yep.
just gonna stand back. I'm gonna let them go through the door first. I'm gonna let them to make the decisions of what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna make any decisions anymore."
Yep. And there's pros and cons with working with a partner versus working alone. And I try to point this out to people. One of the problems when we work together is this is a con is that false confidence.
Mm.
And we can start leaning too hard like oh my partner will pick up the slack. Oh he'll like it can
Like
be
I
a
did.
yeah
Like I did. I sat there, I leaned on my partners and went, "Oh, they have more experience. I'll just let them make the decision."
right. And then it can be a pro is because you don't have to wait for backup. You guys you know you have that you can read each other and you know what the other partner's thinking when you start to work together. I mean, there's these pros and cons, but one of the cons when you start working with partners, especially if you have a badass partner that just knows everything,
Mhm.
it doesn't give you a chance to sharpen that saw, so to
Yeah,
speak, and keep yourself sharp. And then like in your case,
yeah,
you
yeah.
had a traumatic incident that
That I
made
never
you
got help from.
that shied you away. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and I never got counseling in it. I never got told that I should. I never got like, she got a lot of support, I think.
yeah,
But,
because the incident happened to her,
yeah, yeah,
then
and
nobody
so
thinks that it
yeah.
happened to
I
you.
mean, my sergeant was good at the on the night, he was like, "Dude, just go take a break and take a breather," but it was actually one of the worst things looking back on it. He was like, "Go into the meal room and just go have a cup of coffee, have something, and just go take a minute before you do the paperwork." And I went into the meal room alone and sat there, and my thoughts started to come in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
at that time, I had no idea how to process my thoughts, and so I was like,
mm,
"This sucks," and so I went back and sat on the computer.
yeah, and
And
then
never got talked about it again, and so, yeah, so and then I went home, and I think this is really an important thing aspect that I recognize now afterwards is so I was meant to finish at 2 in the morning at the latest. I didn't get home until almost 8 in the morning, until, like, 7:30 the next morning.
really,
Yeah, because we had to do the paperwork, we did opposition to the bail, we did all these different things. We ended up finding the other brother. Well, the another set of another unit found the other brother, so we ended up doing all the arrest file, and because they were going to court the next day. So we're like, okay, so we worked as a team, got it all done, and I was riding my mountain bike to work at the time, and so my phone starts vibrating as I'm coming down the hill to my house. It's my wife calling me, going, "Where the fuck are you?" She's woke up in the morning to go to work, and she's like, "Chris isn't home yet." Um, and so I'm riding down, and I always get choked up here about this. I ride around and I had to carry my mountain bike to the back of the house, past my boat that I had at the time. And I get to the back and I do it and I sit down on the back steps and she's there. She comes out as I'm kind of because she heard me come home. She comes out and she's like what's like, oh, you're home late. It must have been a big night. And I was like, and I just burst into tears.
yeah,
Just absolutely just burst into tears because I've been holding it all night. And I was like, "B got assaulted," and she's like, "Is she okay?" I was like, "I don't know. She's at hospital, but I think she's okay." And just yeah, said a few things then. Never talked about it again.
really,
Never
damn,
brought it up again. Just
yeah,
went cool, got rid of it. Cool, carried on. The next night, back at work.
jeez,
And so, what I learned from that is talk about the shit. Like any of you
yeah,
new officers out there, talk about it. Tell your
mm,
spouse what's going on. If it's still struggling with you, don't bottle it up and stuff it down and be like, "Nah, I'm a staunch
yeah.
hardcore guy," because it doesn't help at all. Um,
Is that the okay? So obviously, that's been the culture of policing in the states forever.
everywhere.
But I'm just curious, is it similar over there?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, it has been. We used to have what we called jug sessions, where here's another Kiwi slang for you, take the piss out of people. So give people shit. You every dumb thing that you did got put into a notebook, and then you'd meet like once every couple months, and you do what's called a jug for every dumb thing that you did. or said or action you did, and so that reinforces good habits.
Who's keeping this list?
You had a jug master, so people would come to him and go, "Oh, Chris did," you know,
This is on
Chris,
the department?
no, so this is just in your sections. So the department hated us doing it because they're like it entices
So the
bad behavior.
team's doing it.
Yeah, so the team's doing it. So everybody has it. So you'd be like, oh, Keith did this, and so to put it in the jug book, and so then you go through and you'd have to do a jug for every like a little normally it was a little plastic cup
Yeah,
of
yeah.
whatever you were drinking for every
Okay.
dumb thing that you did. So it was kind of a laugh, but it also just reinforced like it didn't ever reinforce good shit that you were doing. So
Right.
it's not that great. But so
I can
that was
see
kind of
pros and cons.
yeah, there's pros and cons to
Yeah.
it,
Team building.
team
Yeah.
building, but at the same time, it's like for those
Yeah.
that like me, by the time I did my first jug session, this event had already happened. So we hadn't had one in ages. This event happened and I'm already feeling like I'm a piece of shit. So as soon as I go to these jug sessions, it's like, and especially the new guys, the junior boys, get really picked on, and so
Yeah.
all their shit goes in. And so all of a sudden, that's just knocking my confidence even more. And I'm a stupidly confident guy normally. Like
Yeah.
not much like I won't like I'm not afraid to do much.
Yeah.
Um,
Your confidence tends to go higher the taller you are, I've noticed. So it makes sense.
might be.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I had that incident happen, and then yeah, and I retracted back, and then I was like, okay, I quite enjoyed traffic. I was kind of a semi boy racer when I was before I joined the police, so I was like, I can pick on boy racers pretty easily. Traffic is pretty easy, and you get to work alone. And I was like, I could identify that my confidence was knocked, and I was like, working with other people is not helping me. I was like, I need
Yeah.
the times where I was what we call the Q car, the query car, where you didn't get sent to domestics and then on your own, but you were one up. I actually quite enjoyed it because I'd go to those domestics and I'd hit there first if there was no other unit, and I'd be like, cool, I'm ready to go in, like let's go. And the dispatcher and my sergeant would be like, Chris, hold the fuck back, don't go. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, come on, let me go.
Yeah.
Because I was on my own. I didn't again, and looking back on it, even talking now, it reminds me as well. It wasn't necessarily the fact that I wasn't confident in what I was doing. I didn't want to get somebody else hurt again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You're still dealing with the PTS issues with
yeah,
that.
if I didn't have to if I didn't make the decision to arrest the guy, or if I didn't go through the door first, it wasn't on me if the other person got hurt. Whereas
Yeah.
when I was alone, it's just me. All I have to do is deal with whether I'm in, if I'm going to get hurt or not. I don't have to worry about is somebody else going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I actually had been telling my sergeant I wanted to go to motorways if there was a secondment that came up, because normally they do like 3 month secondments. And then one came up and he goes, Chris, I want to talk to you. And I was like, oh crap, what did I do now? And the joke used to be, do I need to bring the lube for the boot or not? That I'm going to get up the butt. And he's like, no, this isn't one of those. He's like, I want to send you to motorways. I was like, cool, perfect. I've been asking to go. And he goes, I want to send you because, I can tell your confidence you've seemed to kind of pull back. Didn't recognize that it had to do with that incident. And I'd like you to go because you'll be working one up and you can, all
At
that.
least your supervisor recognized it.
Well, yeah, and so
That's a plus.
he wanted to send me, and I had great supervisors. Don't get me wrong, my supervisors were actually great. And so yeah, so he sent me. So I went to motorways. Instead of doing 3 months, I did a whole year there, and I actually wanted to stay there long term, but I hadn't finished my probationary stuff yet. So they're like, "No, you have to go back to the street." I was like, "It's all done. I'm just waiting for the signed piece of paper. Like, come on, let me stay."
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so I did that, and then I went back to the street, and this is where it got real bad. I went to 6 suicides in a matter of a couple weeks, and did the notification jobs for pretty much all of them.
Oh, you had, yeah. I let the MEs do that stuff.
Yeah. So we don't have that. We don't have the MEs or the coroner. Like we don't have a coroner. Like we do it as uniform patrol. So we do it, and
Damn.
that's where I started really emotionally disconnect.
Yeah.
So I was on
Yeah.
a good team, but I got in that habit of not talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I can
Especially
remember
dealing with death is
yeah
always.
there's three there's it wasn't the deaths, it was it was, but it wasn't like I didn't feel they affected me as much as the notification jobs did because I'm an
Right.
emotional guy. I
Yeah.
cry during dramatic movies and like
Yep.
happy movies and stuff. I have
I'm the
tears that
same
come
way.
out. Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
There's not a Disney movie I haven't cried at, especially now that I'm a dad of daughters.
Oh god, yeah. It
It's the
makes it even
worst.
worse.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
and so, I'm an emotional guy. I wasn't then. I cut it all back. I pulled it all back. This is about 2015. 13, so I think it was about the time Black Lives Matters was really hitting people hard over here as well, so I was feeling
Mhm.
like all my people were getting hit. My American people, my cop people, my me people, and so I literally started to completely disconnect. And so I can remember 2 really bad notification jobs where yeah, one was we were trying to find a guy's son. He was actually a defense lawyer. We were trying to find his son who had called up the helpline and said, "I'm going to take my own life. Talk me out of it," pretty much.
Damn.
He said, "I have a rope. I'm gonna hang myself. Talk me out of it."
Dang. And
Yeah.
he's talking to you or dispatch?
No, he's talking to so we have a crisis line, so
Oh,
crisis
okay.
helpline. So he's talking to them. They're then calling us and dispatch is sending us. So we get to the house, there's
Trying
nobody
to get
there.
there in time.
We clear so my partner and I, again with no firearms, we clear the house with a taser. Um, like literally clearing the house, I've got a taser like it's a firearm, we're clearing the house.
Yeah.
And so we clear the house, there's nobody there. We're like, there's nobody here. Next thing, about 5 minutes later, the dad and the mom come home. They're like, he likes to go to the park around the corner. And so we went there. We went down there with the dad. My partner went left. I went right with the dad, and luckily I had a radio with I had an earpiece in, and we go and the dad, my partner finds him, and he's hanging.
Oh,
So
damn.
he's 10-0. I don't know what you guys call a death here, but he's 10-0.
12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 12. So we call it 10-0. So he's 10-0. So I was like, okay. So I was like, oh, sir, with the dad, we'll go back to the car and that. And obviously he's like, okay, well, you guys have found my son. And so I stop at the T section and go down to my partner, like leave the dad there, go down to my partner and go, hey, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, you can't help the kid's hanging out over the water. So we had to get the maritime unit to come get him.
Mm.
Uh, and so I was like, okay, cool. I'll take the dad back to the house and I'll tell them, once we get back there. We're walking back and the dad keeps, how they do when they know something, keeps
Yeah.
on and on and on. And so finally I was like, yeah, we found your son and he's passed away. And watching, he was about my dad's age, watching him just literally drop to the ground.
Yeah.
And again, you're like, as a cop, I've never been trained to deal with this stuff.
Right.
And I'm 2 years into the job, and I'm like, "Sir, I'm sorry. What the hell do you say?"
Yeah.
And put my hand on his back, and he's bawling his eyes out, and he can't even stand really. And so eventually, kind of console him and kind of help lift him up and get him back to the car, and go back and tell the wife again, same thing. And yeah, so that was dealing with that. And
Yeah.
then a few days later was with a different partner, and we went to a guy who gassed himself. And then it was like again on that shift change, nights were just starting, so they came and dealt with the scene. And he was going through a divorce. His girlfriend found him, and then his soon-to-be ex-wife and daughter lived not too far up the road. And so my partner and I were like, "Hey, we'll go do it because we've got what's called the crisis team." We're like, they'll come and take over from us, and so I'll give them a call. I called them a dozen times that night, and not they didn't answer once.
Wow.
And so they were busy doing other stuff, or short staffed as everybody. And so we were there for what was meant to be probably 20-minute, half hour like notification thing turned into like
Yeah.
4 hours.
It's important to point out too for something like this. Now you at the time you were married, but any kids?
No, I don't have kids
And
either,
how
so
old were you during that?
I would have been 26, 27,
Okay.
26,
So
I think. Yeah.
a little older, but imagine this for people trying to put themselves in a cop's shoes. You go to a domestic, you're expected to solve, people that have been together for years, try to solve their problems. You got a father who just lost his kid. You're not a dad. Your ability to empathize in that way is very limited. It's not that you can't, but you just
Haven't
until you
experienced it.
yeah, until you're a parent,
Yeah.
you'll never fully grasp that.
And the kid was
So
a teenager as well, so he wasn't even it's not
yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, there's just there's a lot of things going against us, and
yeah,
especially if you haven't been in the job that long,
mm,
where you haven't, they say that 0 to 5 years is like the rookie stage for street cops, and
yeah.
it's hard to expect good results out of that. That's like it's the most dangerous, shitty time, but fun time for a cop,
Yeah.
because you were learning everything, and you may be the best person at talking to people, but when you have to go talk to somebody, but at the same time think of, do I have a right to stop him? What
Yeah.
laws am I violating any other right? Like you're trying to think of all the things. Is
Well,
there a
and this is what was going through my head at the time because you had a lot of anti-police stuff going on over here in the US. It hadn't quite made it to New Zealand yet, and so there was a lot of, like, that whole what are we what can I do? What can I do? Can I give these people a hug? Can I not? And so in my mind, it was like, no, I can't. I'll run on the eye of caution. So we go to this lady's house. At first, she doesn't want to let us in because she doesn't know who we are. Then she finds out who we are, and she thinks that her daughter something's happened to her daughter in Wellington, which is another city for this, like quite far south. It'd be like the difference between San Francisco and LA.
okay?
And so we're like, no, it's not her. Can we please come in? And she wouldn't let us in. So then we ended up telling her at the doorstep, and then she collapses. And then so we get her into the living room and she's there and that, and we're like, "Is there anybody that you can call to have come over?" And that she's like, "Oh, no, no, no." Couldn't think of anybody because her brain's completely gone because she's so, emotional wreck. And so we dealt with that. Finally, she couldn't even dial a telephone of her best friend. And so we finally figured out what the number was, dialed it, got them to get on their way to come over. And then she was like, "Oh, I'll go and book a flight to go to my daughter to tell, that's further south to tell her that was at college." And so she goes to the computer, finds the suicide note, and then she's back in the living room with us and that after she books the flights and that. And again, we have to be there. We're there this whole time because we're like, we can't leave her like
Yeah,
this, until she gets at least a friend here. And then the 16-year-old daughter comes down and is like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And so then we ended up having to tell the 16-year-old daughter as well. So then she starts, the emotions. And by this point, I'm such an emotional disconnect because of everything that's happened in my career up to now and that assault that happened to my partner and, these different suicides that I dealt with and just started disconnecting because that's the coping mechanism that I knew because I didn't know myself. I didn't know how to deal with any of it. We end up, the 16-year-old daughter, I see her come out of she disappeared, and then I see her come out of the office and shoot upstairs. And I was like, "Oh crap, she's read the suicide note."
oh shit.
And so I tell my partner I'm going to go upstairs, the 16-year-old daughter. And again, I have this thing in my head that I shouldn't be alone in a room with a female because hey, I might get a complaint against myself. All the negative aspect of the job of everything.
Right.
So I go up there and she starts blaming herself and says all these things that, "Oh, I should have done this and I should have done that." All I wanted to do was give her a big hug. What did I do? Put my hand on her back and said it wasn't your fault.
Yeah. Yeah, you lost the humanizing connection, that the whole reason we do the job.
Yep, lost all of it, and that
Yeah.
job completely pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
I completely cut all emotion away from my life completely. So that's when I became a complete shell of myself. At this stage, my marriage was taking a toll because of the emotional disconnect. My life was I rode a motorcycle still at that stage, and I rode a sports bike, and I would go into corners as fast as I possibly could just to try and feel something. And look, this is all looking back. So many red flags, and my wife would always ask me, "What's going on?
Nothing.
What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm
Yeah.
good. Nothing. I'm good." I'd come home and I'd sit there and I'd do nothing all day, or I'd work on
Mhm.
my big truck that I had to work on something and have some sort of accomplishment, and then I'd get pissed off because things wouldn't go right.
Yeah. Yeah, your
And so,
triggers were short fused.
oh, short fused. Wife couldn't do anything right. And so then I ended up talking to a colleague actually at work, and this is where, you never know who you're going to connect with. And she was the problem person when I first started on the section, when I first started in the police. She was the one that everybody's like, "Oh, she takes leave here and there, and I heard now she's off because her back hurts and this and that." For some reason, she was on like community work, like doing like investigation stuff. And for some reason, I walked up to her and I was talking with her, and she's like, "How are things going?" And I just opened up to her. It was like, "My marriage is on the raw, like I don't feel like I don't know about home, things don't feel good. Work is kind of my only escape." Does this sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah.
Um and she's like, "Well, why don't you go talk to the welfare person?" And I literally turned to her and I went, "The who?"
You didn't even know that was a resource?
So looking back, I was told about it at training that there's a welfare person in every station and blah blah. But did I know where it was in my station? Had I ever seen the person? Had I ever talked to the person? No.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Why don't you go talk to them?" And so I did a few days later, went down and talked to them, found them in the back corner, the back office downstairs. And yeah, she was like, cool. She's like, you can use EAP. We've got EAP, so it's anonymous. And I was like, okay, cool. What's the number? Because again, didn't worry about the job because could come to work and I could take my shit out on people.
Yeah.
I've said this since I left, like in different groups that I've been in. I was like, they're like, oh, you're a cop, blah blah, and I was something, and I was like, yeah. And if I was pissed off that day, guess who got the brunt of it? Anybody that I stopped.
Yeah. You're getting a ticket. You're getting a ticket.
Yeah. How many tickets can I give out today?
Yeah.
Because you guys suck and I hate everybody.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you're out there beating them, people. So
No, no,
that's
no,
not what
no,
we're
no.
talking about.
No, I'm not beating people, but
Nobody's
I'm
getting
giving them
breaks though.
yeah, yeah, nobody's getting a break. Like, you did something wrong, you were going to jail, I didn't care what it was, you were getting binned for it. And so, yeah, I went to the welfare person, talked to her, and she's like, "Well, I can also put you in touch with the police, psychiatrist and that as well." But and she went into the butt, and I didn't even let her go into the butt. I was like, "Okay, cool, yeah, sweet, I want help." So I was putting my hand up because I'm a talker, as you can tell. I'm a
Yeah.
talker, and I like to things out, but I wasn't at that stage. And so I went to the police psychologist, went to EAP, so I went to a counselor with my wife, both of us. Turned out my wife was a bit burned out at that stage as well with work, wasn't enjoying work. So the counselor was like, "Oh yeah, cool. You should probably change jobs." So ended up getting my wife. She quit her job, got a new job actually in the interim. Everything worked out as it should, but I didn't get any help.
Really?
So I was kind of there to get it, but nobody really identified what was going on with me.
Okay.
Even the police psychiatrist, I don't know if it was because I wasn't completely opening up, but I was talking about the suicides and I was talking about these different things, and all he fed into was the fact that I wanted to run away and go do something different.
Hmm.
And this is 2014. So
Yeah.
I was in the job, and it's not quite 3 years. I think it was no, it was 20. Yeah, it was 24, 20, the beginning of 2014. And so I was getting this help, and I thought I was getting it everywhere. Looking back, I wasn't. Kind of ended at that and was like, cool, sweet, everything's sorted. Then my station was starting to kind of push me around to different places. They're like, "Oh, we're going to put you to this section. We're going to do this," and that's when I got shoulder tapped for residential security because I was qualified for all the
Yeah.
protection work, and they knew that I was wanting to go that way, and so I got shoulder tapped that, "Hey, there's a job coming up for residential security. We'd love for you to apply for it." So I was like, "Okay." So I went and talked to my sergeant. Was like, "Hey, looking at applying for this job," and he's like, "Well, everybody's shafting you around here, and you're not really enjoying stuff." The guy who assaulted my partner got sentenced to 6 months home detention and $400 reparation, which I forgot to mention, which threw me before I even came back to the street, threw me into that negative spiral even more that I was already in.
Yeah.
And so he breached his home detention, and I was on a hunt. Luckily, my old team found him, because if I had found him, who knows what would have happened, to be perfectly
Right.
honest. And that's where when you're at this stage of burnout, you are more likely and you're more prone to actually using force,
Yeah.
because you don't feel the emotion of that compassion.
Yep.
And so I was hunting for him, but for some reason the universe didn't want me to find him, because every time I'd be heading towards the house or heading towards areas where he would be, I'd get called to something different.
Yeah.
So something was looking out for me those months. But yeah, so then I went to residential security thinking, hey, everything's going to be better because I'll be doing tactical training, I'll be having fun, I'll be in a close knit group of things, and it made it worse, because I went from watching criminals and the identity, the image of a criminal. We all know that we have it. That
Yeah.
that that what we look for, to now watching everyone. Because I was doing residential security, but because I was qualified, I'd get pulled out of there and get put on the actual protection team occasionally for ops,
Yeah.
and so it just made everything worse, because now my security my heightened my paranoia started to kick in.
Yeah. Now everybody's a criminal.
Not everybody's a threat.
Yeah. Shit. It's
and I'd
probably the
never I'd never dealt with my burnout, so it was already, I was burning out even more, because I was draining my tank even more, because my wife couldn't leave the house, and I don't even remember doing this. And this is a side effect of burnout, is you lose that short term memory. So there
yeah.
was massive gaps in my brain, in my time in the police. Like, I was in for 7.5 years, and it felt like it was 6 months because of the memory that I have of it.
Yeah. I told you I deal with memory issues all the time. That's why I
Yeah,
keep a pad of paper here and I
yeah.
write shit down because my brain loses it.
But yeah, so I started burnout real bad. My wife couldn't leave the house, and all those same things started coming back up again. Like
Jeez.
the things that I was doing started coming back. So my relationship started to hit the rocks again. My career, I started just seeking more thrills again. I was riding a motorcycle still to work, and it was like I would just want the thrills. So I would go fast. I would go into corners hard. I would, yeah, do different stupid things on my motorcycle just to kind of get that little bit of a because I was living on adrenaline. I was
Yeah.
searching for some feeling. Then I went to dip mic protection full time, which made it even worse. The office wasn't all that great. The guys were great, but the morale was pretty shit. Because again, the training, like everybody had been there for a long time, and the boss wasn't the best in the world. And so I went to, because I already knew about EAP. So no, I didn't even go to EAP. Did I go to EAP? No, I didn't go to EAP. I was, yeah, just miserable looking back on it, not knowing that I was at the time, and was at a dinner party at my wife's best friend's house, she's a really good friend of mine, and with her ex boyfriend at the time, and she had a friend there. My wife's an event manager, so she was off working that night. I think she was out of town, and I went around there just for dinner, and we were sitting there, and so my friend and her boyfriend, they went off to bed, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll keep watching the movie that we have playing. And her friend was there, and I found myself planning out how I make a move.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I found myself sitting there going, okay, cool. How do I make a move? Had good conversations with her, had known her from before, had met her a few times before, and was like, okay, cool. And found myself attracted to her and wanting to make a move.
Dang.
Luckily, I didn't, because
Yeah.
my parents cheated on each other. My wife and I had that conversation when we were young. If like when we first got together, if we ever get to that stage, and I put it down to this is why I didn't, but who really knows? Um, and yeah, and so I got up, I left, I did some more stupid shit on the way home from like on my motorcycle, uh, and yeah, and then I think it was the next day or 2 days later when my wife got back, I told her I was like, I want a divorce. I almost cheated on you. I had these thoughts going on. Things are done. I'm out. I want a divorce.
Wow.
And my wife is the strongest, most powerful woman I know. And I love her dearly. And because of her, I'm still probably alive. But she goes, just let's go to counseling one more time. Let's see if we can sort this out. Like, we've been together. I think we've been together like almost 10 years at that stage. And she goes, no, not 10 years. We'd been together probably about 8 years, 7, 8 years by that stage. And she's like, let's just go to counseling one more time.
Yeah.
Something in me said, okay, not really thinking anything would change.
Yeah.
And so she ended up having to go overseas for work for a couple weeks. And at this stage, she couldn't leave the house without me saying watch her back or all these different things. So she went over to South Africa, which I wasn't excited for her in the beginning. Like I was excited, but first thing when I went was, "Oh, what protection are you taking?"
Right.
Not
Yeah.
"Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the security." And so that kind of had thrown things in. But so she went, and while she was gone, I was like planning my exit. I was like, "Okay, cool. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Where am I going to stay?" Came back. We went to counseling. This counselor saved my life. She
Really?
literally, yep. So we went to the counselor, went to EAP again because she got it through work as well. So we went to EAP, went to that session, and the counselor goes to me. She goes, Chris, well, had both of us tell kind of what was going on. And the counselor turns to both of us and goes, yep, you guys have some relationship stuff going, which is I know why you're here. But she's like, Chris, you are burned out. And she turned to me and she went, Chris, you're burned out. And this is 2015? No, 2016. This is 2016, like towards the beginning of 2016. And I forgot to mention I had been back here in the U.S. and I was so paranoid that I thought in early 2000 black Tahoe was following me to my best friend's house down the road from here, where I am now. So much so that I pulled over so that it would pass me.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
level of paranoia I had. I was in a different city, a different country that I don't live in, and I thought somebody was following me.
Wow. You're not that big a deal, Chris.
No, I'm not.
Right.
but I thought I was
Yeah.
back then. But yeah, no. So we yeah, so we went to counseling. The counselor turns to me and she goes, "Chris, you're burned out." And I was like, "What?" Like, what the hell are you talking about? What is this? And she's like, memory loss, no empathy. You don't want to go do anything. You're negative, like, and rattled off like half a dozen different things. And I was like, it sounds like I was like, oh yeah, yep, that's me. And she's like, Chris, you need to take a break. And first thing that popped in my head was, you hate cops, you want one less on the street.
Right.
Turns out she has family member that are law enforcement, and like she's very pro police, but that's the demon that was in my head. That's where it got to. And so with some help from her, and her counseling, both of Kristen and I together, and then also individually, that's where I started my journey to get to where I am now. And it started with a motorcycle trip, traveling 8,000 miles across the U.S. from here in Redding, Northern California, to Houston and back again, forcing myself to talk to people again.
Really?
Yep.
Now, was this the suggestion by your counselor?
Yeah, so my counselor was like, Chris, you need to take a break. And so we worked through the whole thing of how that looked. And I still didn't know if I wanted to be with my wife. I didn't know if I wanted to be in the job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But she's like, Chris, you won't find any of that because your tank's so empty. You cannot see the light through the clouds.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, everything was dark. If it was raining, it felt like it was pitch black out because that's how demonized and dark my head was. But yeah, so the counselor was like, you need to take a break. So I was like, okay, cool. What could I do? Luckily, we were in a good financial position. And so initially I was like, I'll go back to super yachts. I'll go back and go work on super yachts for 3 to 6 months and just kind of see whatever. But I was like, I'll just dive into the work. I always wanted to ride a motorcycle across Europe. But I was like, that's not going to happen because financially wise, it's just not going to happen. And also, yeah, probably not the best idea. So at the time, well, my uncle still has it. He's got a Harley, and so I was like, I called him up and was like, "Hey, would you be okay if I used your Harley and just kind of, I need to refine myself and just ride it around for a few months?" And initially he said yes. Week before I actually left on the trip, he called me up and said, "I don't want you to use it." So
Oh,
yeah, so I had to buy one, borrowed some money from my mom, bought one, a used bike, and luckily it actually turned out better because I went places that I wouldn't have taken his Harley.
ah,
Um, like dirt roads and shit like
yeah.
that. So, and so yeah, but yeah, no, she was like, yeah, like when I came up with a motorcycle trip, she's like, that'd be great, but she's like, again, you're gonna have to work at this. And so I'm a very outcome driven person. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go force myself to talk to people, and I'm going to turn it into talking about the fact that I have PTSD, I'm burned out, and I'm recharging myself. So I did.
Yeah.
I posted on social media. I started up an Instagram account and started posting stuff, like posted stuff on my Instagram account around my journey and that, and told people everywhere that asked. Started being
No
honest.
shit.
And that's why I
Nice.
talk here now. That's why this, a very long. Like, I know that was the extreme long version of the whole story, but I feel like since we have time, it's good for people to recognize that.
Well, it's important. Sorry to cut you off, but it's important because there's going to be another cop, another military guy, another first responder, somebody that deals with the public. Doesn't even have to be a first responder, but that finds themselves hearing the same things they can relate to. And I think that's why it's important to take the time because people aren't having these conversations, and when they do, it's a soundbite.
Yeah,
I'm like, that is not helping people. Yeah, they look at that and go, "Yep, I go through that too." They see that soundbite.
yeah.
But
Well,
that's it.
the
That's where it
the thing that
ends.
I recognized on that trip, and this is why I run things like I do with my business, is by me opening up and telling my story and being brutally fucking honest.
Yeah.
Like, I would be at gas stations because I had a bike. I've got photos of the bike still, and that's why I'm doing a motorcycle retreat here in May. I'm taking people around that want to come do it. We're doing 7 days riding around, hitting some of the same areas. Because when I was at gas station, I got this bright blue. It's actually kind of funny blue, with policing. It's
Oh,
this
yeah.
bright blue dry bag, and it was strapped on the back seat with bungee cord, and it had everything in there. It had a tent in there. It had a sleeping bag. It had my cooking stuff. And I'd stop at gas stations, and people would look at it because it was out of the ordinary. It wasn't a normal touring bike, and they'd be like, "What are you doing? What are you up to?" I was like, "You asked. Here you go."
Yeah.
But the awesome thing is because I was vulnerable and I was open about it, and not telling them that because I wanted pity, not telling them that because I was having problems, but telling them it just because they asked and because I needed to say it,
Yeah.
they start to give me tools. They start to give me ideas of what things that I can do. They
Yeah.
tell me experiences that they had. I talked to, different people that had so many different, like, traumatic things, and they'd be like, "This is what I did to work through it." It's
Yeah.
awesome to see that you're doing stuff about it.
And it's great that you didn't have the attitude of you're not a doctor, you can't tell me how to fit. Don't I tell people,
I think
if s-
possibly because I'd been to counselors before and they weren't fucking good.
yeah, they didn't help shit.
They didn't help
Yeah.
shit, and the amount of cops that I talked to that talk to therapists, and I'm like they're like, "You can help me more."
Yeah.
Because the therapist is great, and they give you some tools, and they talk stuff out, but no actions gets changed.
Right.
I'm an action-oriented person, man. I'm like, "If you ain't doing shit, I'm gonna call you out on it. Why the
Yeah.
fuck didn't you do that between the last time we talked and now?"
Yeah.
Cool, let's get to the heart of it. But yeah, it was like and so I just started trying those different things, but by talking about it, man, and that's why I love doing these podcasts. I still talk about it, and it doesn't cut me up as much as it used to.
Yeah.
Talking about
Huh.
my old partner get assaulted, I used to be in tears.
Yeah.
And, I've released all that stuff. I've done neurolinguistic programming, like, like, courses and stuff, so I'm, like, qualified in that, and gotten rid of and rewired everything, but it's an emotional thing, and it should be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't not get cut up because I'm not emotional, I don't get cut up because I've processed it.
Right. You faced it instead of just suppressing it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
during that trip, I learned who I am, was the biggest thing.
Yeah. So you do this, obviously, you're in a better place. Marriage is all
Yep.
healed up,
Marriage is
which
great, my wife and I are happier than ever now, we're
which
talking 6
that
years on now, but
that's a gift that keeps on giving towards mental health for people. You got to take care of yourself first, then work on the relationship, and everything else just seems to fall in place. So,
Yep.
um, so you do this, and you do the social media thing, and you see that it worked. It is working. And you decide to create programs, and you've quit policing, and you're trying to help people. So let's go into that, so we can show people your site and all that stuff.
Yeah, so my site is createfromwhy.com, and my business is called Knocking Demon Limited. And the reason it's called Knocking Demon is because I recognized on that motorcycle trip that the demon in my head is the thing that kept pushing me in the wrong direction. And the light on the other side, so my counselor called it the dark wolf and the light wolf. She's like, the dark wolf is always telling you, he's very loud, he talks a lot, but he doesn't actually have the power that the light wolf has. That's quieter. So I started on my trip. I was like, "There's this fucking demon in my head, man," and so that's why I started my business, and it's called Knocking Demon. Now, the reason everything's called Create from Why is because I help people really identify why they do what the fuck they do. Now, how many cops say I'm a cop because I want to help people?
Almost all of
Almost all
them.
of them, and it's a great reason to be a cop, but it's only going to get you through your first probably 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And then you need something deeper. So you really need to know who you are. So I take people through a 7-step process. And so my business here is all about helping cops reclaim their mental health. And there's different ways that you can work with me. I help cops, as you can see there, the police fitness prep, the department trainings, and then one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
And so the police fitness is all around helping people pass their fitness testing, help them actually get into the law enforcement, and give them the foundation so they don't end up where the fuck I did by using the same tools to extract the performance. Now, the department training is why I'm here in the U.S. right now, and I'm not sure when this airs, but I'm here and available till about mid May. Sorry, when I actually do this motorcycle retreat for people. But I'm running a free 4-hour workshop for departments to actually go through my trainings. I'm actually off to Aurora on Monday to go
Okay.
run one for them. But what it does is it really helps officers identify who they are and realize that who they are is not what they do.
Yes. So if you are listening only and you want to see, I actually have his website pulled up, createfromwhy.com. The web page is on my YouTube if you're watching, or Rumble. Not a lot of people use the Rumble, but yeah, it's on the screen right now, so you can go check that out. And let me get this off of here. But yeah, absolutely. One of the harder things for cops is when their job identifies them as who they are. And I'm
I
like, I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I love policing, but it isn't me. It's
Yeah,
just what I
and
do.
that's the biggest thing is when you have a cop that's extremely negative or that is burning out, it's because they've lost who they are.
Yeah.
They've started to identify as the cop, and in turn, I call it serving. Like the job, they start serving the job. the job's not serving them.
Yes. Yep.
And when
Yeah.
when you're able to recognize why you actually do the job, like what your actual why is. So my why, I take people through a 7-step process. The first 4 levels are logical. So it depends on circumstantial, environmental, what's going on. Um, but then from there, we then go into the emotional brain. And so we go back into childhood as such in a way, not reliving things, but going back and talking to that inner child and go through the emotional levels. So mine are creating experience, creating less pain. You can now see why I got to where I did, and to be seen. And so as soon as I wasn't creating less, felt like I couldn't create less pain, i.e., my partner getting assaulted and me blaming myself, I wasn't felt like I wasn't being seen in good light. I was being seen in a negative light. All of a sudden, I emotionally destroyed myself. Then I was sitting there going to notification jobs, again, not seeing myself, not being
Yeah.
seen in a positive light in my own eyes, that I was destroyed. So I then help people take that why, mine is to be seen, and actually turn it into a positive, turn it into a mission statement that you can live by, that you can enjoy and you can love. Mine is I help myself and others truly see ourselves, so we create the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I was a cop. When I
Yep.
was in that, I was loving it. And so I take people through that. You said it before, looking after yourself, looking after your family, and then you look after work.
Yep.
And so
And
many people get it upside down.
it's hard too, especially if you're with a partner, if they are not emotionally ready to let you fix yourself. Because there
Mm.
are some partners out there that when you try to say, I need to take some time for myself, I'm like, well, where the fuck's my time? I don't get any time by myself. Why do you get time by yourself? That makes
And this
things
is
hard.
and this is where I walk through during the training, is I get them to identify, um, really what they are doing is not them. The fact that that self time doesn't have to be a motorcycle trip for 3 months like I was on. It can be a 5-minute thing. Just one
Yeah.
second.
Oh yeah. No worries. You're okay.
That's all good. That's all good.
I love the surprise visits. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah,
It
it's great.
works.
So yeah, a friend of mine that I'm staying with, needed to drop something off in the RV.
She's like, it's my RV.
She's like, "It's mine, man. Get out of the
Right?
way." And she's like, "I'm sorry." But no, so with that, it doesn't need to be like in the beginning. Maybe it does, depending on how burned out you are. Like I was so burned out that I didn't care about anybody. I ended up pushing to that thing of I didn't care about anybody else, and so I was like, "I'm out. You
Yeah.
don't want me to go? Cool." And at the first, my wife did not like. She was not on board. And then a friend of hers actually turned to her, and this might be something for spouses in that friend of hers at work, one of her work colleagues goes, "What's the worst that happens if he goes?" And she goes, "He doesn't come back." My wife said to her friend. My wife and her friend turns to her and goes, "No, that's not the worst." Because at this stage, she hadn't talked to me pretty much for a week and a half.
Yeah.
Because she was pissed off. She's like, "You want to take our money? You don't know if you're coming back, and yeah, all these different things." And her friend goes, "No, the worst thing that happens is he comes back and nothing changes."
Yeah. Profound statement, I'm sure woke
Yeah,
her up.
it did. And so she's like, "If you don't get on board, he's going anyways. So
Yeah.
just if you get on board, set some parameters." And so my wife did. She was like, she set out, and again, this is good for spouses to realize if their partner is burned out and goes to them, "Hey, I want to take a bit of a break." Get counseling, I would say, or get a coach or get somebody, come talk to me. I'm happy to have conversations. Is set some boundaries. So my wife set out, you can only go for you can only go for 3 months because we can't financially afford it. You can't take all the money. This is how much you can have. I think I did it all on 10 grand New
Okay.
Zealand, which was about 7 grand US at the time. So I did 3 months on 7 grand. So anybody who tells me that they can't live on nothing, and I think I came back with money. Um, and then she was like, "If you're gonna break up with me, you're gonna come do it to my face.
Yeah.
You're not doing it on the phone or via text or any of that kind of video chat," which was just kind of starting back then. She's
Okay.
like, "You ain't." She's like, "You're coming back and you're telling it to my face."
Yeah. So it sounds like you pulled a Forrest Gump. You went running.
I did. I went
Y-
running,
I mean, this is
just on a
it,
motorcycle. I went
yeah.
running.
Yeah.
And I
That
quickly recognized that I wanted to be with her. That was that kind of being able to do that thing for myself. But going back to that self-care side of things, it is so important. My wife knows, like, just before I left to come on this trip, which I'm gone for 3 months again. So I'm gone for 3 months on this trip, and everybody's like, "How the hell are you guys doing that?" Like, "Oh my god, how can" again, and she had used to have this back when I did my trip. "How can you let him go for 3 months?" And it's like, I'm not letting him.
yeah,
He's going, and we're doing this together. Like, even
yeah.
this trip, I posted a thing on my social media that I was doing this trip and for departments to, reach out, and I'm excited, blah, 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 and you know how many people messaged her and asked, "Is everything okay?"
Oh my god.
Because I said I was coming back here for 3 months,
I
and they read it that I was coming back here permanently.
I mean, the military guys do it.
We do it for 12 months, man.
Yeah.
So,
So, eh
but yeah, so it's that, but it's that self-care side of stuff. My wife, before we left, we sat down because we had some stuff, I was really just focused on a lot of things, and so we had some, had to have some deep-hearted conversations, which we have, which communication is key, especially in relationship or even in your relationships at work with everything going on. She went to me and we set out a calendar, and I was like, "Oh, I'll stop yacht," because I yacht race still. I got back into it about 18 months ago.
okay.
And I always come back, happy and recharged because I've connected with people, and it's not so much the sailing side of it, it's just the people side, different
Yeah,
people that have nothing to do with my work. And so, I always come back more recharged and happier, and so I was like there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the races on every other Wednesday night." I was like, "I can stop doing them so that we can have, date night or whatever on a Wednesday," because with our schedules, that was looking like that would need to be that night. She's like, "No, you're doing that." I was like, "No, no, no, I don't need to." And she's like, "No, you're doing that because that is a self thing and you need it."
nice. So she recognizes it.
She recognizes
Yeah,
it. Same thing with my paragliding. I go paragliding with my dad. Same thing. I come back and I'm over the moon excited.
yeah,
And so, yeah, sometimes because it takes all day long, she's kind of like, she's like, "Where's my time?" And so then again, that communication. I go, "Okay, cool. Next weekend I won't go paragliding so that we can have." And
yeah,
this is why we are having this conversation, breaking down our calendar. But so we ended up, she's like, "Okay, cool. Well, we can do this day and this day because I got nails." She normally has nails on that she goes and gets done on a Thursday. So we worked out and we figured out the days and stuff that we could do a date night.
yeah, yeah. I mean, my wife's sleeping right now. She works nights as a nurse, so
Yeah.
I mean, I try to schedule my podcast around her sleep schedule, so I'm
You can have time
when
together.
she is awake, yeah, we
Yeah,
can have
you can
time
do it,
together.
but you can do your me stuff. Then you have, so sit down and communicate with your partner, because if
Yeah,
they are having that whole thing of where's my me time, well, you guys haven't communicated enough to
yeah,
actually go, okay, cool, where is our me time? Because my pyramid goes self, it then goes your relationship, it then goes your kids, it then goes your family, and family doesn't have to be blood. Then it goes work, and then it goes every other motherfucker.
yeah. I don't know your triangle, and that's the same way I live my life,
Any
so,
person that isn't burned out and any person that
yeah,
is happy and isn't in the negative is living their life that way.
yeah,
And
yep,
yes, it kinda
absolutely,
molds and turns and stuff like that. You gotta catch yourself on different things,
yeah.
but
Yeah, the
yeah,
podcast thing, that's a me thing. This is
yeah,
a I didn't I had a frustration that I'm like, we're this close to like kind of turning a corner with community policing, but nobody's quite doing it yet. And how do we how do I use social media to do that? Because it's a tool, it's there, we're not using it right.
no.
And I didn't think of podcasting as a social media, but really is. So yeah,
No, it's
so
great. I'm glad you're doing it, and
started
your episodes are great, and it's great having these conversations and having nice long ones. Mine are
yeah,
like
I was
45 minutes to an hour, and so I'm like, "Man, I could do like 3 episodes with this person," because,
right.
it's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's like,
Yeah, especially if you have a dynamic and you can talk to people. That's why I told you when you're like, "I got a half hour, we're gonna do the whole 3 hours." I'm like, "It just depends on how the conversation goes." Some people I have on here and I'll poke and I'll prod and I'll try to get them to talk and
yeah.
they
I've
don't
had
have
some
it
of
in them.
them. I've had it in some of them. We could go for 3, 4, 5 hours, but
Yeah.
I've got other stuff that I have to do this
Right, yeah,
afternoon.
yeah, and that's why especially, like, today I'm just drinking water, but
Yeah. Oh,
if
you start drinking as well. Oh, if
I
we did this in the evening, man,
yeah.
it'd be a whole 'nother
I get
story.
people on here and we drink whiskey together and or especially when we do in studio. When we do in studio,
Uh,
it's almost always a drinking,
at some point,
podcast.
we're gonna have to do next time I'm in Texas, I'll have to come and we'll do an in studio. That'd be
Hell
fun.
yeah, man. Anytime we can do remote again. I'd love to do one while you're in New Zealand. That'd be pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, man, we can do that when I have
N-
my full setup and everything.
Now that I have a connection to New Zealand, I'm
Uh,
excited because I really want to go out there. But
you come over,
yeah, also
you come over,
tell
brother.
your
I'll show you around.
tell all your criminal justice buddies out there if they ever want to be on the show. I the
I
one
got
thing
some
I'm
guys.
really lacking is a um outside the US cultural influence of policing because
What
it's important to talk like what you talked
it's a
about earlier.
yeah.
Like I said,
Know
we
those
could have done a whole
differences.
episode on that.
Yeah,
But
and we can in the future. I mean, I've got other friends and stuff. The thing that I find really quite strange, and this goes into that communication side of stuff, is you know American cops are burning out. They are leaving the job faster than ever. They are using more force than we're getting more and more complaints of force. Yes, you got the DAs and stuff that are hammering down on things they used to never. But I find American cops are actually more willing to talk than New Zealand cops.
really,
Most of my podcast is Americans.
ah,
And the
yeah,
reason is that I feel is that they're willing to talk about it because again, just like yourself, we don't say where you work and that. And I'm like, cool, perfect. Like whatever boundaries we need to put on it.
yeah,
But New Zealand has this tall poppy syndrome, we call it. They don't want the poppies, the
yeah,
little poppies, and there's always there's sometimes the one that sticks higher than the other one, and you're like, oh, you just want to cut it down because they're all the same level. Yeah,
okay.
New Zealanders don't want to be that tall poppy.
Oh, okay.
So
There's
they
a lot
don't.
of weird Southern sayings
Yeah,
I've
there's
been
a lot
learning
of
since I've been
yeah,
down here.
yeah.
Like that dog just don't hunt. Like I stuff like that. I'm being from Michigan. I really get a kick out of all the
Yeah.
Southern
Well, it's the
euphemisms down
difference.
here.
It's just like me being from like living in New Zealand. My accent's not like I come back normally and I have a little bit of an accent. It disappears really quick, but it's the slang that comes up.
Yeah,
But that's New Zealanders for you, and so you don't have this like Americans. A lot of times, New Zealanders find Americans very crass and arrogant or loud, and I'm like, that's because we don't have the tall poppy thing. We're like,
yeah,
cool. It's you got to fight for what you want. There's a
yeah,
lot of people.
yeah,
You got to be the loud one in the room, otherwise you ain't gonna get a word in.
yeah, yeah. Especially
Whether
at
that's
six
right
foot
or wrong,
six.
but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fucker.
But
I'm
you but you
jealous.
but you have that, and so you don't get a lot of that deep-hearted conversation. It's getting better,
Yeah,
but that's one thing that, like, yeah, I've got a few people that I definitely will go over, but back to the kind of the stuff that I'm doing, it's all about knowing who you are so you can have those deep-hearted
yeah,
conversations, so you can bring yourself if you know that you're a person that isn't an outgoing type thing, okay, cool, then you're gonna have to recognize that within law enforcement so you can create those parameters and communicate that to people. Hey, I don't like going out. I don't like going drinking. I don't like having the big rah-rahs that most cops have, and this is why. And you can actually clearly articulate it.
yeah,
But most cops can't clearly articulate this stuff, and so they end up getting burned out and they get bum hurt, as I call it, because the bosses don't care about them and all this stuff. And it's like, well, all that you have no control over, and most of the time they can't shoot straight because they just don't see what's going on
yeah.
within themselves.
So you're doing this full time now. This is your job.
Yeah, so I've been doing stuff with the police fitness prep that you saw on the website. I've been doing that for the last 6 years. And so that came out of the fact of fitness saved my life. It's probably the only reason that I didn't take my own life was because I could go to the gym and get angry.
Yeah.
It was my drug.
I
Some
mean,
cops.
I was gonna say it. People don't realize, but it does create a chemical change that you
Yeah,
need.
it's a dopamine hit. It's
Yeah,
a dopamine hit. It is a healthy drug until it's not.
yeah,
Um, but it's better than alcohol, it's better than drugs, but it
yeah,
is still a drug. The cops that tell me if I don't go to the gym, I become angry, I go, okay, cool. You need to uncover why you get angry, not just release it in the gym.
yeah. Because you need the serotonin and oxytocin.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are
you
the other.
do.
That's your
Yeah,
people skill stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and so I used to use the gym because of that same thing. If I was angry, I'd go to the gym. I remember the first time that after I left the place and I went and I was doing some boxing on the bag, and I was like, I'm not actually angry hitting the bag. This is really weird feeling. Um, and so yeah, so I went down that road, and then I got asked to help somebody join the police force. They're like, "You've done this. You've done like high level, SWAT type fitness training and trained yourself to get there. Can you train me to get in? You've got your personal training cert as well, which kind of helped. It doesn't really mean jack, but
yeah,
um, and so I was like, yeah, and I absolutely started loving it. And so I started helping them with that. And then I started going out, I was going down my own mental health journey. And I was like, holy crap, the shit that used to help me perform hardcore and I used to use in the gym or use in my fitness, if I had used that everywhere else, I wouldn't be where I wouldn't have got to where I did.
Yeah.
So the knowing myself, the unlocking my demons, letting things flow out when I'm running, actually embracing the stuff that is painful in life, it would have been, oh yeah, cool, sweet, let's carry on. Like I would have been able to process things. And so I've created, that process has taken me a while, but now I'm still doing the police fitness prep stuff, especially for people in New Zealand. Happy to do it for anybody anywhere. But now I'm doing the burnout, have a specific program that does that, and also do one-on-one coaching with it. Right now, I don't have any group coaching to help counteract burnout. I'm just working, just aiming to get into the police departments because then it can actually help. I feel it can help even more exponentially than if I'm trying to search out the individuals every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned boxing. I just started boxing about a month ago. I've always been into obviously jujitsu.
Yeah.
I love that stuff, but no real striking skills. And I just like changing it up because as long as I'm working out, doing something physical, I'm a very happy go lucky guy. But
Well, it balances things out, and because cops are running on adrenaline 24/7, whether they think it or not,
yeah, that hypervigilance.
hypervigilance is a
Hmm.
very good way. Like that's why I used to go to the gym, and that's why cops feel like feel so great after the gym because it counteracts that adrenaline.
Yeah.
It reduces actually the cortisol level in your body,
Yes.
and so you actually start to think clear, and so you're like, oh, I feel so much better after the gym, and I'm not angry. It's because you've actually reduced those, the cortisol in your system, and you've actually
Yeah.
done something strenuous, so your body goes, oh, okay, cool, I can relax a little bit,
Yeah,
and then
biologically, you are fighting a battle
oh,
constantly as a cop
consistent,
because working midnights, you're not seeing the sun, vitamin D goes down, cortisol levels go up, you're eating shitty food. Cortisol fights oxytocin. So now that's where you start to lose the interpersonal skills with people. And it gets very sciencey, even though people don't think about it. And
yeah. I'd love you before because I know I've got to run in about 20 minutes, so we
oh,
still
you're
got some
good. Yeah.
time. But I'd love for you to bring this up, and I'd love to offer it to your viewers. If you go createfromwhy.com, and then
Okay.
you go /book.
Okay. Oh, you want me to bring up the
Yeah,
actual?
bring it
Oh,
up, bring it
yeah,
up,
yeah. I see
so
what
people
you're
can
saying.
see it. Yeah, bring it up. So
Createfromwhy.com/book.
book.
Okay. That up on the screen. Oh my god, is that your guys' uniforms over there?
That's our number one. So that's our dress uniforms. Yeah, so
Holy cow.
that's me at graduation
That's
actually.
embarrassing.
So that's how young I
You should be embarrassed for that uniform
am.
right there.
So now they've actually got baseball caps. So we used to have to wear that hat
Oh, yeah,
on
we still got the
all.
bus driver hat. That is a part of our formal uniform, yeah. Or cowboy hats.
They just
So,
recently changed it to a baseball cap. But we used to have to wear that, traffic stops, everything, and that little crest gives us the power to stop people.
okay.
But no, that's not the uniform we'd wear on the street. We wear a SRBA, a stab proof vest that
Okay.
stops bullets
The
as
outer
well. But
carrier stuff.
yeah, the outer carrier one.
Yeah.
So they've just changed it recent, so it has Molly. But yeah, I prefer the old one. I never had to wear the new one. But so yeah, so this is the book that I wrote. It's more of a guide than anything.
Okay.
And so it is literally a step by step process of the training that I run.
Okay.
So if anybody wants it, they can go in. They just enter the name, name and email, and they'll get it. They'll get an instant download to it. Um, and yeah, you can download that and walk through it. It's got sections like we've got workbook sections and everything in there.
Okay.
And so they can walk through all of it, get an idea of my stuff. And if they want to try and bring me to their department because they feel their department's wanting to learn more, then perfect. Hit me up. There's some links in there and stuff that you can
Very cool.
or you can go to the website.
Do you have an audio version of your book?
I do not, but it's only 52 pages long,
Yeah.
and it has like there's so many pages in there that are like where you can take notes. It's probably only and then that's at like 12 point written. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's an easy read.
I gotcha.
It's just, but it is a like I said, I'm an outcome driven person, so there's not a whole ton of stories and all sorts. It's not a storybook. It is a let's get shit done book and let's work on ourselves. And
Okay.
so it's a step by step. Every single tool that I teach in my trainings, they're all in there.
Gotcha.
So
All
it is
right. And if
literally,
you're listening, guys, I did pull that up on the screen so you can see it. See the book and all that
yeah.
stuff.
So it's createfromwhy.com /book. and
Awesome.
go download it. It's free to download. And yeah, so I just wanted to offer that out to anybody who wants to learn
Excellent.
more.
Yeah, I that's one of the things
So
with
yeah,
this podcast. I tell everybody, I'm like, if you're coming on the show, I'm gonna promote the hell out of whatever it is you got going on. Like,
yeah,
I want
and
I want everybody to succeed that comes on here. So,
I love it. I
yeah,
love it.
well,
The biggest thing I'm trying to do is get my stuff into police departments because that's where we can impact the most and we can
yeah,
counteract burnout. Um,
yeah. Don't stop there.
studying,
Firefighters, nurses,
oh,
EMTs,
and it will,
EMS.
it will. I can
Yeah,
just talk to cops all day long, like, and I can talk to the
yeah,
command of cops all day long because I can tell them exactly what's going on. I mean, I've done a lot of research on the studies. 2019, 26% of people that left was because of mental health or burnout
yeah,
of cops. That's
yeah,
back 2019 before the last all this
yeah.
stuff going on. I just saw a study, a thing on LinkedIn, and I've still got it, but I think they're up to it's up to like 40 or 44% of cops that are leaving or like 44% of people have left
Yeah.
is the rate since
Yeah.
2019, and
Yeah,
they're
I
leaving
trust
because they're
me, I've
overexhausted.
seen it. I've
Yeah,
seen the recruiting numbers and all that stuff. It is hard to get cops anymore.
yeah, and it is,
Um,
and
yeah,
but and then my thing is I can save the department as well. You know,
yeah,
if you save one cop from leaving, you're now just to go from when they go to when a person applies to join in, so like they go through the recruitment process and actually get trained to graduation day. It costs cops 100,000. It costs a department average of $100,000 to train that
damn.
person. So if I can stop one cop from leaving, I just saved the department $100,000.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
you're looking at 26 to 40% of cops are leaving because they're burned out.
damn. So
You think
that's
of
crazy.
how many cops have left your department in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping a few sergeants leave so I can hurry up and promote. I passed the
Just
test, just
just
waiting to
put
promote.
just
So,
push them a little bit and they'll burn out.
yeah, right, yeah.
26% of them burn out leaving because of burnout, so there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I think citizen support makes a big difference in your city too. That helps.
Huge.
Where I work, I love it.
That
So
and leadership. If you can get leadership that's behind you,
yeah,
that not yes, there's the whole thing of, the whole, like, you do something dumb and that it's if a leadership can communicate is the number one thing. If you can communicate with leadership and leadership can communicate with you, you'll have a less burned out department in general. So
yeah,
if you just started there and then you started to look at all the implementation, but the problem is that most of the leadership don't even know who the hell they are either.
yeah,
And so that's why I'm like, okay, cool. My training is not just like I get asked, is it for patrol? Is it for non-sworns? Is it for, leadership? I'm like, it's for everyone. They all should be going through it because
yep.
then you actually are learning. They all know who they are and then they can actually communicate better.
Good stuff, brother. Well, I appreciate you being on. Unless you got any departing words that you want to put out there.
All I'll say is if you're struggling, reach out.
Excellent.
If you're
Well, bro,
struggling, reach out. I'm happy to talk. You can find me on my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. All of it. It's just my name, Chris Chandler-Yates. No hyphen. It's all there.
excellent. Awesome, brother.